戦争は変わった。一つの時代が終わり、俺たちの戦争は終わった。
War has changed. It's no longer about nations, ideologies, or ethnicity. It's an endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. War and its consumption of life has become a well-oiled machine. War has changed. Verified soldiers carry algorithmic arms, manipulate social influence, AI enhance and regulate their timelines. Memetic control, information control, emotion control, battlefield control. Everything is monitored and kept under control. War has changed. The age of deterrence has become the age of control, all in the name of averting catastrophe from weapons of mass destruction. And he who controls the battlefield controls history. War has changed. And when the battlefield is under total control, war becomes routine.
Think outside the cage.
It's getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy.
You are listening to Canary Crime News Talk.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk. It is December 22nd, 2025, episode 902, Rigging Reality. My name is Gonz, at Face Like the Sun, director of the Age of Deceit films, and author of Archetypalism, your favorite Asian provocateur for Christ, live to tape from the metaverse to bring you the best news, which is the gospel message of Jesus Christ, while reporting the egregious with a well-rounded, biblically grounded take on world events. It's Monday.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Basil is out today, as you can tell, so I will be running or steering the ship today solo, but really it's not solo. We got people in the chat. We got hopefully the Holy Spirit present here. There's more than two of us here, so the Holy Spirit is here. So that's really all we need. And there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover here because obviously, you know, as we were saying last episode or last week, actually, it was pretty quiet in terms of news for a couple weeks as far as big events, or I guess when there is a political assassination a couple months before, everything seems a little bit less, I don't know, exciting, or, you know, I don't know, in terms of the news, right? Obviously, there's lots of things going on. There's lots of stuff that we don't see. I remember really Graceful used to always ask the question, I don't know if she's still on X, but she would bring up the question, what are we being distracted from today? And it's such an appropriate question because most of the time when we get pulled into debates about stuff going on in the world, whether it's news or politics, and now the mixture of politics and religion, and not just politics and religion, but politics, religion, and prophecy, you know, people tend to lose track of what's really going on. They get sucked into these discussions and debates. And look, I'm just as guilty. Okay. I think all of us are a little bit guilty of participating in the cultural debates and discussions, but I do not take sides on some of these issues, or try not to, or if I do, I will clearly explain why I am taking one side of the argument over another. And usually it's not based on political loyalties, if you will. And yeah, that keeps our show under the radar. Of course, we had the opportunity to really go hard MAGA a few years ago, and we just decided not to because you'd be selling yourself for a political veneer, and that never ends well, in my opinion. In history tells us or teaches us anything, and I'm not just talking about recent history, I'm talking long-term history, we would know that things that get sucked in politically usually end up, well, let me rephrase that. The winners will write the history, right? But usually it's at the expense of another group, a marginalized group, an ignored group, or ideas that don't ever see the light of day, ideas that may heal or actually bring substantive discussion to any given topic. Those things are dismissed and suppressed, if you will, for reasons that make sense in hindsight. We can't have certain ideas getting pushed out there too hard. Otherwise, people might start making some sense, and we can't have that. As social engineers of the world who control everything, we cannot have substantive discussion. Any kind of logical discussion must take place in the arena of politics. And I just see a problem with that entire premise. And I'll get into some more stuff about that. But I'm taking a look here. I'm just checking out my X page. Go to X, follow @FaceLikeTheSun. Thank you to everybody who interacts on X. And, I'm always on there replying to different posts and things of that nature. And I'm seeing that there are 12 live viewers on X, which is pretty low. It's pretty, usually we average, at least the Gons account, the Face Like the Sun account, gets at least over 100 views or viewers, live viewers. But it's been getting lower and lower recently. And I think it's because we're talking about stuff that is going to be the next topic of censorship, if you will. We'll discuss more of that later as well. Thank you to all the producers, especially monthly producers coming in. You guys keep this show going. We operate on the value for value model, which means we don't take advertising money. We don't take sponsorship deals. We don't do anything like that. Everything is in-house, produced by the people. And if it wasn't for the people, and if it wasn't for the Lord himself, this show would definitely not exist, because we would not be able to support ourselves and our families. So appreciate all of you who have supported the show. Most of you who do support the show now have been doing so for a long time. There hasn't been a whole lot of new folks stepping in to support the show, which tells me that either one, we are irrelevant, like we are our ideas and our whatever, our popularity, whatever, it's not resonating with the public, which maybe it was never supposed to, or there are algorithmic disadvantages for being the Canary Cry News Talk podcast, especially on social media and social platforms, including X and YouTube and things like that. So it's one or the other, and we struggle with that. Basil and I always have conversations of like, hey, what can we do better? We know what we need to do. Are we doing everything we can do? And certainly there are things that we can improve on. Obviously, there's always a place for improvement. But also, sometimes it gets discouraging when you put in a lot of effort into a piece of content or an episode or something like that, and the response is all negative or no response. No response is just as discouraging at times. But that's not really it. We're not doing it for clicks and the dopamine hits and all that kind of stuff. That is just part of the nature of being content creators on the internet in 2025. So at some level, it's unavoidable. But trying to have a grounded approach to this is very important, especially for all the Christian content creators out there. If you're really going to pursue truth and discuss things honestly as much as you can, maybe you or I or anybody can be wrong about a particular issue when it comes to what's happening in the world or politics or whatever the case may be. But at least the honest take, if we're going to do that, it's not always going to be popular, and it's certainly not going to necessarily resonate with the algorithms who are trying to get more clicks, get more responses, get more reactions, and things of that nature. So we could LARP being like super ultra MAGA or something, but at a certain point it loses kind of its effect. The joke gets old, kind of thing. So appreciate all of you who have been around supporting, and whether it's just listening in or through your time, talent, treasure, it really means a lot to myself, my family, and I know it does to Basil too. So thank you for that. All right, there's a few things we're going to go into here. I'm planning to just run through things today and rant as I always do when it's a solo show. I don't have Basil stopping me. He cannot stop me from from the microphone today. So we will kick things off with some Trump news. Specifically, we're gonna do a little moon story.
Oh, we could get a hot tub in the Moonbase.
Who would have thought that Basil talking about the Moonbase would be so prophetic? Prophetic, ladies and gentlemen, because Trump is launching a new age.
We will launch a new age.
And part of that comes from space.com. Let me get my space jingle.
Space. Wanna go to space?
Want to go to space? Space.com. Trump signs sweeping executive order aimed at, quote, ensuring American space superiority. The president wants the U.S. to start setting up a permanent moon base by 2030, among other goals. The U.S. has some new marching orders in the final frontier. On Thursday, December 18th, President Donald Trump issued an executive order entitled Ensuring American Space Superiority. Dominance off Earth is vital to the nation's security and prosperity, according to the document. And I love that. Dominance off Earth. I mean, we really are going into sci-fi world where it's starting to sound like the beginning of some kind of RPG game or something, like dominance off Earth is vital to the nation's security. Quote, the United States must therefore pursue a space policy that will extend the reach of human discovery, secure the nation's vital economic and security interests. Why do we need space policy that secures the nation's vital economics? We're going to be mining for gold. Are we mining for antimony? And I don't know. We'll see what we can do there in space. And security interests unleash commercial developments. Yay, commercial developments in space, and lay the foundation for a new space age. That's why we always play that Trump New Age clip.
We will launch a new age.
Because, he's supposed to be the Christian president. Why is he launching a new age, or a new space age, at least for the Spacians? The executive order states, you can read the full text here. Great. We don't have to get into the full text. The document gets into some specifics about how to make this happen. For example, it calls for the nation to return astronauts to the moon by 2028 and to start construction of a permanent lunar base by 2030, quote, to ensure a sustained American presence in space and enable the next steps in Mars exploration. Yes, this has been part of the narrative crafting for the Mars mission pushed by Elon Musk. This idea that we need to build out the moon, build out the moon station, which, there might be, depending on your worldview about creation, some people think the moon is not spherical. I would argue that it is probably spherical based on the lighting. But what is on the dark side of the moon? Up to lots of speculation, lots of conspiracy talk. And, creating a lunar base seems to be, I don't know, maybe there's already one up there, It's got to find the switch to turn it back on or something. Nuclear power in space is part of the vision. That's a big deal. Ensuring American space superiority lists as a priority the development of nuclear reactors in Earth orbit and on the moon, and states that one such facility should be ready to launch toward the lunar surface by 2030. I often mention how in the book of Revelation and a lot of eschatological passages, it discusses how creation basically falls apart, right? If Jesus doesn't intervene, all flesh would be destroyed. The heavens recede like a scroll, and the angels go out. They gather the elect from the four corners of heaven. There's all this language that seems to discuss how we will venture out into this vast unknown, but there will be a regathering. And this will become important in later conversations about Zionism and stuff too. But in terms of this final consummation event that God talks about, which grabs everyone, the book of Obadiah 1, I love quoting this because, of course, it's a polemic against Edom and stuff, but it does say, you will nest among the stars. You will fly like an eagle, nest among the stars, but from there I will bring you down. And I've often stated, like, hey, maybe there will be people in quote unquote space, believers even, but at some point there's going to have to be a harvest of sorts. And perhaps it's because creation is falling apart. Our hubris gets the best of us, and literally creation is destroyed in a sense. And that's why Jesus needs to return and restore things. And that's why there may be eventually a new heaven and a new earth and a new Jerusalem, all things that I would argue has not happened yet. I mean, I look around, I don't think we live in a new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem. Some people believe that, but I tend to disagree with those who do. But so given that context of this grand eschatological event or time when God is restoring creation, let me talk about Trump wanting to put nuclear reactors orbiting the earth, on the moon. I mean, it doesn't feel great, you know. It's like, I understand the arguments for the I don't know, sort of the power, the energy efficiency, and the amount of energy that nuclear reactors can produce. And there's also, we've talked about small scale nuclear reactors becoming a thing. I think if Sir Ike sent me recently something pointing out how I believe it was Sam Altman. Let me double check the text message, but I believe it was Sam Altman who is heavily invested in small modular nuclear reactors. And so these small nuclear reactors, I think, is going to become more of a thing. And I know Sir Ike's been tracking it for a while, and we've touched on it a few times on some prior episodes. But this will become the infrastructure of energy for the future. And I'll bring it up right now. The cryptocurrency part of it is wrapped up in this. It talked about the economics, and of course, I've ranted about the book Soft War by Jason P. Lowry, which you cannot get anymore. Apparently, you can't even find it online anymore. And the argument in that book is that not blockchain per se, but the mechanism at which Bitcoin operates, which is called proof of work. This mechanism can secure cyberspace. And so therefore, blockchain technology, specifically proof of work blockchains, become a national security concern. And that's not something popular, or I don't think we're even technically supposed to talk about it, because they've censored the guy, the MIT graduate who wrote the book about this. They brought him into, I think he was part of Space Force, and then he was recruited into intelligence. He had to take down all his social media posts and all that. And I know he's back. He's saying some things online now, but definitely hush hush on the front of what he's up to. And so, yeah, these goals and stuff and these plans, not surprising. 2030, interesting date there. We all know about Agenda 2030, the United Nations, over 15 years ago. Oh, no, I guess it's 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 2015. We documented this on the Face Like the Sun channel. The Pope was Pope Francis at the time, came to New York, announced the Agenda 2030, and also, began distributing these groups, I forget what they were called off the top of my head, but there were groups all over the country already at that time in 2015 who were setting up programs that will assist in the handing off into a Agenda 2030 type of thing. And that's where, a lot of people are now familiar with phrases like "you will own nothing and be happy." Those things have become very popular to explain, or at least culturally disseminate, this idea of Agenda 2030, or they used to be called Agenda 21 for the 21st century. And these agendas have been around for a long, long time. And a lot of it is public information. And this is what drives me crazy about, especially nowadays, some of the Christian content creators out there who are getting caught up in some of the political debate. It's not their fault. They just haven't done the research into, quote unquote, the New World Order, which is not a crazy conspiracy theory. It's been discussed by the world leaders for decades, saying like, we would like to create a new world order. There's Bush in 1991. I think it was September 11th, 1991. We have formed a new world order. The whole thing, it's been ongoing for decades, but yet somehow it's still a conspiracy theory if you bring it up. And so it's frustrating to me when I see these Christian content creators out there and they're not informed about some of those issues. And so when they hear something, they just say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, or that's just nonsense. No, it's publicly documented for decades, but because it's not on your X timeline, it doesn't exist or something. I don't know. But the 2030 agenda definitely as part of this is no surprise. NASA as part of this, no surprise. You want to look at the occult roots of NASA? Dig in. There's plenty of information there. Jack Parsons, who was part of JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. What was he doing in the desert of New Mexico, hanging out with the founder of Scientology? What was his name? I forget his name. But anyway, he's out there trying to do rituals and trying to create golems and stuff, and doing all the rituals that were presented by Thalemist, Aleister Crowley. And so all these occult influences for Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which, fed into NASA, but then also Project Paperclip, where a whole bunch of the Nazi scientists from Germany were brought into the United States secretly to work on the American space program. And so American space program in general, maybe a continuation, a generational continuation of what the Nazis started, back in the 1940s. L. Ron Hubbard, thank you very much, people in the chat. L. Ron Hubbard, that's Psalm 40 giving it to me. Thank you, appreciate it. So, yeah, so it drives me crazy that there's so much information and knowledge behind these things, these numbers, or these quotes or sayings that a lot of people are becoming familiar with. Sometimes we just got to stop and dig in a little bit more and learn about some of the history before we start, calling people names or coming to rash conclusions. But there you go. Trump, a sweeping executive order aimed at ensuring American space superiority. The one thing I'm not looking forward to is seeing advertisements in the sky. We already have, I don't know if you've seen Starlink in the sky. I have. It looks like Santa Claus with reindeer flying through the sky. I mean, it is a bizarre, if it wasn't for Elon Musk and SpaceX and all of his projects being public about what they're doing, not just SpaceX, but particularly Starlink, which is a chain of satellites that orbits the Earth, then you would think that you're seeing some crazy UFO thing, because that's obviously my first reaction when I saw it with my naked eye. I thought, oh my goodness, what is that? Is that Santa Claus? Because it looked like a roller coaster coming down under the clouds and then kind of rolling back up into the clouds. But then I checked it and it was Starlink. So it wasn't some crazy UFO. But so more of that. I mean, I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want to see Elon Musk's face, up in the sky, or like Ben Shapiro up there telling you to buy waffle makers or something. I'm not looking forward to the day where we can't even go outside without being bombarded with advertisements.
Everybody loves waffles.
So there you go. That's the space news there for 2030 for Trump. It'll come up a little bit more, or at least Trump will, in different conversations later on here. But let's talk a little bit of AI. We'll start here.
Artificial intelligence.
And we will also discuss this in the context of Epstein.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Now, somebody on TikTok made a video, an AI video, which is compelling. And, I mentioned the phrase that's become popular nowadays: you will own nothing and be happy. And it's become this real short quote that gets people talking about or thinking about or researching things like the United Nations or the World Economic Forum, or all these different institutions, these global institutions that have plans for some kind of global governance. And the reason why that quote was so viral is because it distilled down literally like 30, 40 years of research into a phrase, right? And that's kind of our culture nowadays. We can only consume bite-sized pieces of information, and anything more than that, you got to read a book. Who's got time to read a book? Some people watch documentaries. I guess that's the the definition of research nowadays. I watched a documentary on Netflix about it, or I watched a YouTube video on it. And look, I've been a YouTuber for 14 years now, technically, with a little hiatus there because of the suspension. So I understand that, there's something to be said about creating content and making information available out there. But I know that as a content creator, I've experienced this wall where it's like there's only so much that I can do as an individual, or even as a group of people. There's only so much each content creator can produce. There's no way you can do all the research you need to do and then compile it into something that is presentable and compelling enough for people to at least want to learn more about that topic, which ultimately for me and for Canary Cry and for Face Like the Sun has always been, hey, study the scriptures. It'll tell you everything. It might not give you specifics that you're looking for, but it will give you the archetypes, the patterns that are emerging in our world today, which have not changed since the fall. It's the same pattern over and over and over again. It is still present today in our fallen, sin-filled world, and the only thing that can get us out of it is Jesus Christ. That's been my message. And so I try to always point in that direction because I know I'm just one human being with limited resources and I can only do so much. But now we have AI. We have artificial intelligence. You just type in a nice prompt and you're able to capture a lot of things in a short video. Now, I'm not going to play the audio. So if you want to, because it's just music, I will explain what's happening. But if you want to watch it, the links are always in the show notes. There, you can get the show notes in the email if you're on the email list, or simply go to canarycrynewstalk.com and look for the latest episode. Look for episode 902. We publish these show notes prior to going live, and sometimes that backfires a little bit because things happen on the fly, off the cuff sometimes, and we don't necessarily always include that information in the show notes because it's coming in after the fact. But it's there now if you want to look at it. This video, it was shared on TikTok. It's 2 minutes long, and what it is, an AI video of Jeffrey Epstein holding a smartphone and taking selfies with all kinds of people. Now he starts with Tom Cruise, a man in the Eyes Wide Shut costume, and actually looks like the set of Eyes Wide Shut is where this begins. And I believe that's the director of the film. I'm not 100% sure who the other individual is there, but Epstein is taking a selfie with Tom Cruise and then a guy in a mask and then this other guy, which I think is the director, but I could be wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to play it in the background here. And so he takes that selfie. Now Epstein's walking through this nice room. He goes into a hallway. Now he goes to the set of, I think that's some Nickelodeon show. It says Amanda. I believe that's Amanda Bynes. And he's taking a selfie with Amanda Bynes. And, who's that? The creepy guy from Nickelodeon who got in trouble for all those weird things. So anyway, he's taking a photo with him, and I know the chat. Look at the chat, guys. You guys are gonna be able to drop the names of all these people. And then Epstein takes a selfie there, walks over to, who is this? This is the set of, it's another show. I'm not familiar with that one, but it's definitely another one of those Nickelodeon shows. Was that Josh and Drake? Maybe it was Josh and Drake. Hold on one second. Let me back up real quick. Yeah, I believe that is supposed to be Josh and Drake, which, of course, some of those stories came out of. It's horrendous when you learn about the abuse that took place in Hollywood when it comes to the children of these shows. I mean, it's crazy because the truth community back in the early 2010s, this was, some people were on a mission to expose this stuff. And it got some traction, and I think more people are aware of it now because of things like TikTok. But it's almost like too little too late. The abuse happened, and the format of things have changed now. But it's horrendous. You hear about some of these things, and it's terrible what these young people had to experience in light of being on a very popular TV show. So here's Epstein. He's walking over to another set here. And now he's on the set of The Wizard of Oz. Ooh, I just paused it on a white flash there. The Wizard of Oz. There he is, laying on the bed with the cast of The Wizard of Oz. And interesting illusion there. Yeah, so he gets back up. Now he's walking over to Arthur Freed, winning his Emmy and taking a picture there. And again, this is all AI. So it's making the point of Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, no, there he is with Bill Cosby and the entire alleged, I believe these are the women who came out and sued Bill Cosby after all of his stuff came out. And it's, I don't know, it's like 25 women or something in the background. And they're all taking a selfie together, big old smiles. And so there you go. There's another sort of victim. And I'm not entirely sure if all of these individuals that are put together in this AI are actually like on the Epstein list or anything like that. But I think it gives the point. It drives home the point that Epstein's whole thing, or at least part of his thing, was, oh, there's another set of another Nickelodeon show. His whole point was blackmail, right? It was blackmail for the elite, and most people are up to speed on that. There he is with Steven Spielberg and a couple other people. I don't know what the movie is there, but maybe the movie buffs can. There it is. Oh, Charlie Chaplin was on the island. Is that why Charlie Chaplin is there? Interesting. There's Epstein taking a selfie next to a jacuzzi with Justin Bieber, Diddy, and who's that other guy? I'm trying to remember his name. Usher, that's his name. Diddy, Usher, and Justin Bieber, all in a jacuzzi together. And there's Epstein taking a selfie there. And let's see. Oh, you got the empty bottles of you know what on the ground. Now he's in the White House. He's in the Oval Office, and he's taking a selfie. This is my favorite in this little sequence here. He's taking a selfie with George Bush Jr., who's sitting on the floor holding a paper airplane and some bricks on the ground, some Django pieces on the ground, seemingly an airplane knocking over a building. And then somebody's painting his portrait of this scene. And of course, Epstein is in there taking a selfie with Bush Jr. The implications, I believe people understand the implications of that when it comes to 9/11 and, Bush being there. And then, of course, the finale. I don't know if this is a finale, but this is the big one. Epstein sits down. He's still in the Oval Office. He sits down on a bench with President Bill Clinton in a blue dress. And this is, of course, a very famous image that went viral. It's crazy. I think it's been about 10 years since this image went viral of an alleged portrait of Bill Clinton wearing a dress that was in the Epstein home, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's kind of wild to think that the whole Pizzagate thing was 10 years ago now. It's wild. Hey, has it changed? Have things changed? Has it gotten better? I don't know. I don't know that it has. Maybe it's gotten worse. And finally here's Epstein taking a selfie with Henry Kissinger sitting on a throne. He's got a leash, and the collar is around Bill Gates. And then next to Henry Kissinger, standing up next to the throne, is Bibi Netanyahu. And so I think you get the point here. This is, again, just a TikTok AI video. But it's the concept of, hey, what you see is not everything as it seems, number one. Number two, Epstein was part of a blackmail operation. Everybody knows that. But I bring it up also because the undercurrent of the Epstein topic is less discussed. Okay, so the topic of transhumanism got really popular during COVID because there were a couple scientists, or I guess there was a medical professional. They came out and they started making claims about how the vaccine is actually for transhumanism, and that phrase, that word, became really popular in the context of the vaccines. But of course, if you've been with us for a while, we've been talking about transhumanism since 2011 as a major topic of concern, not just because these billionaires and tech elite are trying to live forever, which is already sort of biblical in a sense, in terms of the lie from the Garden of Eden. but also because a lot of our tax dollars and a lot of our resources, like our data, is being scraped and collected by these individuals to create this sort of, I don't know, future utopia for the elite. And this is well documented now how Epstein had a plan, his agendas about seeding another planet, and he had all kinds of wild ideas about his lineage and his legacy. And in my opinion, that's the part of it that still hasn't really made it to the mainstream mind, which is that, hey, this is not just about blackmail. Yes, it is about blackmail, and that was certainly the power play of Epstein, and we can start talking about his connections to Mossad and intelligence, and that whole apparatus. Okay, so we know about that, we're aware of it, but even beyond that, the transhumanist aspect of it, I believe, is much more not just concerning, but prescient in light of biblical eschatology, in light of what Jesus said in Matthew 24, as it were in the days of Noah, so shall it be the coming of the Son of Man. What was going on in the days of Noah? A lot of things that resemble what the tech elite are trying to do now, in terms of messing with the fabric of creation, messing with the building blocks of life. And the result is judgment. The result is judgment. Jesus died on the cross as the second Adam because, of course, he couldn't carry the Y chromosome of Adam because he was the first fruits of the resurrection, and he is God's only begotten son. And for him to die on the cross for all of humanity, he had to have human lineage, but also be of divine origin. And so that's sort of the amazing miracle of Jesus, and also the reason for his death and ultimate resurrection. And those things are powerful things that if you believe that Jesus died, that God sent his only son, died for us, for you, for me, and that belief changes our hearts. It causes us to repent, our mind to be cleaned, and to protect that newness and that refreshness of life that comes with all that. It's baked into the fabric of basic Christianity. But when you don't have that faith, of course you're going to pursue living forever in this fallen state, living longer, and all those things that the transhumanists want. And quite frankly, they've been very explicit about, hey, we're going to live forever. Hey, we're going to, defeat death, things of that nature. I mean, these are things that Jesus accomplished on the cross, but somehow it is the goal of the technocratic elite folks to do it. And I play this audio ISO quite often to remind us that that is the agenda of these folks. Here's Jared Kushner, son-in-law of Donald Trump, mentioning how we might live forever.
My generation is, hopefully with the advances in science, the first generation to live forever, or the last generation that's going to die.
The first generation that's going to live forever, or the last generation that's going to die, according to Jared Kushner. And actually, I had some things in a specific order, but because I brought up Jared Kushner, I'm going to start this next segment with Jared Kushner.
Zionist!
This is from Times of Israel. And the headline: U.S. said to pitch Project Sunrise, a $112 billion plan to rebuild Gaza as luxury destination. Reported proposal drafted by top Trump officials Kushner and Witkoff to be completed over 10 years. Images of New Rafah as seat of government, Gaza City as high-tech smart city. New Rafah. I'm going to need to do like a word study on that word Rafah real quick, because I'm just curious how close it is to like the word Rephaim, like Rapha as in like the dead spirits, according to the Hebrew. So hold on, let me just do that on the side here while I continue on here. So here's what the article states. A U.S. proposal to rebuild war-torn Gaza into a high-tech, luxurious coastal destination over the next 2 decades has been pitched to possible donor countries, according to the report on Friday. The project, which would cost $112 billion over the first 10 years, was developed by the team led by U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff over the past 45 days. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing U.S. officials. Initially, the U.S. would commit to, quote, anchor the program by providing $60 billion, while envisioning Gaza being able to self-fund parts of the proposal as it gets underway, according to the report. Gaza's going to self-fund? Wow. How does that work? Given the current situation, obviously, the presupposition here is that the war in Gaza will end. I also believe that is part of the agenda for Trump, is that under his presidency, he's going to bring, quote unquote, peace to the Middle East, and solving the Gaza situation, I believe, is part of his agenda. The 32 pages of PowerPoint slides, is that a 33-page PowerPoint slide if they include the introduction, labeled, quote, sensitive but unclassified. Oh, man. Don't you love that? It's sensitive information, but unclassified. And detailing a 4-stage vision to clear the rubble. Clear the rubble, rebuild the strip, and take Gazans out of poverty. Wow. Talk about euphemisms. Has been shown to wealthy Gulf countries, Turkey and Egypt, the Journal reported. Earlier this year, Trump floated an idea for the U.S. to take over and rebuild the strip to create the Riviera of the Middle East. Mar-a-Lago, whatever, Mar-a-Lago, what is it? Marga, Gaza, Largo, whatever it was. The 20-year-long roadmap will be completed in 4 stages, beginning in the south with Rafah and Khan Yunis, then central camps before finishing with Gaza City, the report said. Now, strictly in a geopolitical context, the idea of Greater Israel has been discussed for a few decades now. And this is the idea that the modern Jewish state has a right to the geography of the promised land, which is much bigger than what is currently the modern nation state Israel. And so therefore there could be some, plans or agendas to actually, quote unquote, fulfill the footprint that was promised for the Israelites in the Old Testament. And a lot of you guys know me, for those of you who have been around know this, but if not, if you're new, which there's always somebody new listening, I've always talked about how a lot of messianic prophecies that relate to the restoration of the land are either archetypal in that, it already happened, like the Old Testament already happened, or with the New Testament fulfilling it already happened kind of thing, or it is, or it's both and or. And it is also a anticipated future fulfillment where Jesus returns and actually restores Jerusalem, actually restores the nation, if you will, under his authority, ruling with an iron rod or iron scepter. And so these ideas have always existed. It does not say that a political state will accomplish this on their own terms. And actually, one of the reasons why a lot of the Jews of Jesus's day rejected Jesus as the Messiah was because he wasn't fulfilling those geopolitical prophecies. And something similar could happen today, but in reverse, right? The one who does accomplish this for the modern nation state Israel and does defeat all the hostile enemies of the modern nation state Israel, the Christians and the conservatives will find this individual or group to be a peacemaker and someone who may be even ordained by God to protect this modern nation state. However, it is a warning. I'm not saying that this is definitively going to be the case, but it is a warning that scripturally one could argue that the man of sin, the son of perdition, part of his activity when it comes to these eschatological events is to actually defeat the enemies of Israel, or the region of Israel. And if that's the case, then the setup for the individual who actually pulls this off would be the Antichrist. And again, these are ideas that, this is why I'm writing the book, Archetypalism, to flesh out, not just flesh out, but document it, because they're all like kind of floating around in my head. And I made videos here and there. I've ranted about it on the podcast, but there's not like one place where I have all these ideas fleshed out in a cohesive document. And I hope to do that with Archetypalism. So let's see. I'm just looking up the word for Rafah. It's Arabic, on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip. Name is generally understood to come from a Semitic root meaning to be high, raised, or elevated. Okay, many linguists connect it to the root RF in Arabic and related Semitic languages, who carry the sense of lifting, raising, elevating, and being exalted. Okay, all right. There is a mention of a place called Raphia in Greek, which corresponds to modern Rafah. The location appears in classical and Near East text as a border town marking transition between Egypt and the Levant. So, okay, Rafah, raised place, a high place. Ironic that God tells us to, tear down the high places, right? And here we are, we're building up a high place for the Gazans there. And I don't put it past them. We said as soon as October 7th happened, it's crazy. I have the receipts here. I'm not going to necessarily pull them up here, but when October 7th happened, I said on the show leading up to October 7th, right? Like a year leading up to it, I mentioned on the show, and I have it on the timeline on X and stuff, that the concept of Judeo-Christian or Judeo-Christianism, Judeo-Christianity being the fabric of the United States is going to not only be challenged, it's going to be ripped apart. They're going to split the Judeo and the Christian and cause strife within especially conservatives in America. And when October 7th happened, I said, actually it was a year before that, Candace Owens left Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro. And that was like the big red flag of like, okay, I think they're going to really, really ramp up this op to split the Judeo and the Christian as the quote unquote fabric of the United States. And sure enough, I mean, it's been 2 years since October 7th, 2023, when the whole thing happened that started this current iteration of the conflict in Israel. And man, it's one of those things where I want to say I called it, but also I'm a lot of different emotions. One, like, what was the point of even saying it? Because not enough people cared or listened, obviously. So it doesn't matter that, but maybe some people did. Maybe that one person heard it and they thought, wow, hey, that's what this is. And, they're not like completely sucked into the psyop today. But, so I'm having that emotion of like, man, why does it even matter? What my opinion is, it doesn't help anybody. But at the same time, I want to have that I'm being cautious about it. I want to have that, like, I knew it, I called it kind of moment, but also that, starts to leak into pride. So I don't want to go there either. But you get my point. There's like the struggle of like, wow, I was right about that. But also, man, it kind of stinks that I was right about that, because look at all the crazy strife and debates and arguments that the topic has caused, to the effect of just complete nonsense in most of the conversations taking place when it comes to the topic of Israel, Zionism, America First, MAGA, Trump, Epstein. It's all tied together into this big conglomerate issue, which was obviously already on fire. And then they just got like a dump truck of gasoline and just unleashed it with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that just really fired up everything, because now I'm seeing a lot of Christian content creators that I respect for doing fantastic work over the years on various topics. And I see them just like blindly, or maybe not blindly, that's too strong of a word. Maybe they're just culturally agreeing with certain takes and stuff. And I'm going, but do we not know the history? Do we not know the full context of things? Or are we just looking at, because these are people that champion critical thinking and champion, context and all these different things that I agree with. But when it comes to this particular issue, all of a sudden they're just like, just go with the party line. And to me, I'm going, what happened? What happened? We were fighting for free speech. This is one example. We're fighting for free speech. Oh, Elon's doing a great job because he's bringing free speech back to X, which, by the way, we're kind of like, we don't know about that. But at least it's not the sort of leftist progressive type of censorship going on. Well, the censorship's about to come back, but it's about to come back in a different form. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But it's triggering a whole bunch of people because and I go back to this again, people are not providing proper definitions of the word Israel when they have conversations. And it is creating a lot of debate that doesn't need to happen, to be honest with you. But it's happening because sometimes it's talking about the modern nation state. Sometimes it's talking about the biblical Israel, which is very complicated, complex. It's not a simple, hey, it's just them, the Jews, there they are, boom. No, there's a huge history biblically that goes through a lot. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of, for example, Abraham. Was Abraham a Jew? Go read your Bible. Go read your Bible. He wasn't really a Jew. He was a Chaldean, right? Living in a pagan world, a pagan Gentile. And God took him and, of course, chose him. And, of course, the lineage begins there for the Messiah. But he wasn't like somebody we would call a Jew today, and the question becomes, are modern day Jewish people or people who identify as Jewish, are they the exact same people as those in the Bible? I'll get to that in a second. Let me play this clip first. This is from Mike Huckabee. And here's what he said.
But where does that come from? There's a difference between dumb and ignorant. Dumb is that a person cannot process information. They just don't have the capacity. They don't have an operating system, if I put it in computer language. Ignorance is that the data isn't there. What we're dealing with is not an operating system problem. It's a data problem. We have not downloaded the proper data, the true data into the minds of younger people. And we've assumed that they're going to grow up intellectually curious and intellectually honest, and that they will look for themselves, but they're not. That's the problem. They're not looking. They're taking at face value what some podcaster says, and the result is absolutely dangerous.
Okay, so he's talking about this anti-Semitism, right? And he's saying that the proper data is not being presented to young people. And it's a really, really kind way to say we are not propagandizing with the right information to the children, right? I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. I have a daughter who's in her 20s. So I have children. So I've done the parenting thing. And let me tell you, if you're a parent out there, it's very challenging, very difficult. And they're watching everything you do. And they are shaped by how you talk, what you talk about, what you consume on a daily basis, what you're doing on a daily basis. They are absorbing all of it. Okay. And so as somebody that, like myself, who have been looking at all these crazy topics over the years and studying these things, and also doing a news show a couple times a week, breaking down world events and trying to stay grounded and focused on God's word through it all. To me, it's very apparent when a TV show comes on or like a YouTube video or something pops on, and my son takes something that is said there and will repeat it. Our minds are very impressionable. We are all like that. We all came through different types of propaganda, mind control, whatever you can call it. We're all sort of victims and a conglomerate of all those things. And within all of it is the Word of God, which I think it's such a miracle that the Word of God even exists today in as close to the form it was, a couple thousand years ago. But truly, it is the antidote to this problem of propaganda, the biblical worldview. And, I know there's debates within different views and interpretations of the Bible. I get that. But the general concept of the big overarching themes of scripture really has helped me parent. I'm not a perfect parent by all means. I have many failures as a parent, but I know that at least if I am leaning on the word and I'm leaning on prayer and I'm leaning on the Holy Spirit to guide me with my parenting, that even if I have moments where I feel like I failed my children, I know God will not fail them, and so I have this approach that is trying to teach my children to be critical of things going on in the world without buying into some whatever view might be popular at the time. And this is important for everybody, because I know that a lot of people just want that influencer or that loud voice to be their representative because they're saying things that you want to be said or you agree with, and they're putting it into words, and then it's going viral. And there's somebody at the church I'm at who has a son who's really into Nick Fuentes. The father told me, "Oh, my son's really into Nick Fuentes right now." And I didn't really get to have a conversation with the son or with him about it, but my whole thing is like, oh, okay, let's be careful about that. Let's be careful. Not because I'm calling Nick Fuentes an anti-Semite, whatever, all the horrible names people are calling him, which some of it is warranted, even though I think some people miss the joke or miss the LARPing that goes on and the trolling that he's doing. But on the other side of it, I know there's certain clips of Nick Fuentes saying a really, really clear example of the gospel message, so it's kind of like, okay, we can't lean on any, he's right, Mike Huckabee's right, you can't lean on any podcaster or whatever, but you also can't lean on the government. You're not going to just believe what the government tells you either, right? So anyway, I'm going on this rant, but the bigger issue here of molding our children's minds to believe a certain way. But what's worse is sort of the way he talked about it, like programming the youth with correct data. They need the right data. And it's like, well, all right, now you're talking about your children or the youth as some computer software that you just need to upload the right data to, and then they'll just comply to whatever the government wants. And that's not really critical thinking. That's not good either, All right, here's Dennis Prager being asked if the Old Testament Israel is the same as modern nation state Israel.
You think the Old Testament, when God references Israel, God means the modern state of Israel led by Bibi Netanyahu?
I don't know if God chooses prime ministers. I think he leaves that in human hands. He has given us free will, but yes, it means Israel. In the case of the Palestinians, relinquishing violence and war and terror and giving up their weapons, there would be peace the next day.
Okay, there's like so many things. There's so many things that trigger me on this. All right, first of all, he says yes, it's Israel, and you guys, I don't necessarily want to do a whole breakdown of that, but most people understand, and they've done a little bit of study, that the Israel in the Old Testament is not the modern nation state of Israel. And geographically, there's some overlap, of course, but it's not so black and white that, Israel that started with Jacob, it's in Genesis, and it refers primarily to a covenant people, right? And in fact, when you go into what is it, Deuteronomy 29? I think it's Deuteronomy 29:11. Yeah, I'll read it in the let's do the Berean Standard Bible. Your children and wives. It's sort of talking about the covenant and who it belongs to, and it mentions who you would expect: the leaders of the tribes, the elders, the officials, the men of Israel, your children and wives, and the foreigners in your camps who cut your wood and draw your water. And the foreigners. So the covenant is not a genetic thing per se. It's not just a ethnic genetic lineage thing. It's certainly included, but I believe God's plan to restore the world and all the people was not contingent on this one particular, well, I should say Jesus was contingent. The coming of the Messiah was contingent on protecting this bloodline, because he said that the Messiah is going to come through this bloodline. So it makes sense that God would protect that bloodline. But other than that, post resurrection and post Pentecost, if you are to believe the wholeness of the Bible, then, you know, including the foreigners, even in the covenant, the earliest Abrahamic covenant, is consistent with what Paul wrote about in Romans 9, 10, 11. And, you know, we often cite the passage about how not everyone who descended from Israel is Israel. Not all children of Abraham are children of the flesh. All those passages, right? And so there's consistency there. And my point being, the identity of Israel is a theological identity from the Bible. It is not a territorial or contemporary geopolitical or even ethno-religious identity or biblically, right? So for Dennis Prager to say it's the same, I don't know. I mean, Prager is a smart guy. He's very important in the culture war between the left and the right. But if we're going to start digging in a little more on theology, I don't know if he's the guy to go to for some of this stuff. Also, he said, I don't know if God chooses the prime ministers. There's an argument to be made that God allows for, you know, sort of, or does pick, in a sense, all the leaders. You know, maybe we're the ones voting, but sometimes maybe the people get what they deserve, in a sense. And the land promises, I'm not going to get into all of this. I have a lot of notes on this stuff, and there's good videos out there on all of this. But the concept is that Israel as a whole of God's people, even prior to the splitting of Israel, the nation, between the 10 tribes and, you know, the tribe of Judah, even before that, it simply just means God's people, God's chosen people, or people that follow God. And I know that's not what the word means, but I'm saying that's theologically what it represents. And that's why it's so confusing in modern politics when we start talking about Israel, because a lot of people are talking about it in the geopolitical context. The people that a lot of the Christian right are calling out, the people that are being labeled woke right or woke Reich, right? Like the new Reich, oh, the new Nazis, the Nick Fuentes and all this stuff. And again, this is not defending Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens, because they're making claims on their own terms, and then whatever. Like, you could agree or disagree with what they're saying about some of those issues, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk or TPUSA. We'll have a couple clips on TPUSA in a moment here. And so putting those things aside, you know, to label them anti-Semitic and heretical and all this kind of stuff, I think that's done in haste, and I think it's done only in the context of modern politics. It's not happening because of an actual biblical view. It's happening because of modern contemporary geopolitics. And if people aren't aware of the spiritual battles going on here with narrative crafting and fifth generation warfare that we often talk about, then they're gonna get sucked into the culture war, which I just repeat myself over and over again. I feel like a broken record, but I often spoke about how the conservative revolution, this current populist uprising, happened because mainstream public discourse pulled normal, quote unquote, so far left, right? There's more than two genders. There's all these crazy ideas, and made it mainstream that saying otherwise, or saying like the most obvious things, became revolutionary. If you said publicly, there are only two genders, all of a sudden, huge crowd, you're our guy. Yeah, let's vote for this guy. And it's like, wow, they really created a situation socially to where stating the obvious, like there are only two genders, creates a revolution. I mean, think about how crazy that is, right? So in that context, what we're seeing today is, I mean, very similar. where you pull something over to a certain extent, or pull it to a place where it's uncomfortable, and then stating the obvious becomes revolutionary. So I just warn all the Christian content creators out there, talk about these issues, definitely address them and point out the faults. We do that too. We often talked about, especially early on when we started News Talk in 2016, we were looking at a lot of news stories, and we were looking at how somebody like President Trump was unfairly characterized by the mainstream, and pointing out the lies and deconstructing where the mainstream media or legacy media would lie about something, or slip in a little propaganda about something. And now that practice is widespread, like almost everybody is skeptical of legacy media, but not enough people are skeptical of alt media. And alt media, as we've said for years, has been this counterplay, but almost a controlled opposition to the legacy media, because obviously legacy media was losing popularity, they're losing money, all this stuff, and people are becoming independent, quote unquote, but we can't have true independence. So we're going to create alt media, which is basically an offshoot or a fork of mainstream media, but it's going to look independent, right? You got your Tucker Carlsons, you got all these guys out there who used to be legacy, now they're quote unquote independent, but really they're just alt media. They're part of the same type of establishment that was there before, telling all the lies and creating all the propaganda, but now they're out in the wilderness of the internet. And so it looks like they're independent, but they may not be, especially if they are economically being supported by various, groups, think tanks, even governments, lobbyists, whatever it may be. And at the highest levels, it's almost unavoidable. And that's been the blessing of Canary Crime Radio and Canary Crime News Talk, is that we never got big enough to even be presented with some of those offers. I mean, there were some times, especially early on in the Trump campaign, the early Trump rise, 2015, 2016, we weren't necessarily offered money, but there were opportunities to really lean into the MAGA movement and be faces of MAGA and things like that. And it's like, nah, man, I just can't do it. I can't represent a political party because to me, it's undermining the core message, which is Jesus Christ, the gospel message of Jesus Christ. Now, some people might say, well, the greatest act is to act. And we've talked about that. We've discussed how you can apply politics in your local governments and do things locally to affect change, because a lot of times the focus is on the federal policymakers and global politics and things of that nature, which ultimately affects our pockets, our wallets in the long term, good or bad. But it tends to be a distraction. It tends to confuse what is biblically moral with what is politically moral for a particular party, and that creates confusion and chaos, and God is not the author of confusion. So, okay, little rant about that whole thing with Dennis Prager. I mean, again, we can go on and on about this, but I just, again, I'll admit it, I'm getting triggered by some of this stuff because it's troubling, it's there's not enough people doing not enough digging, or they are, when they do dig up old clips or something like that, it's doing nothing but sort of affirming their particular worldview, and which of course everybody somewhat does that in a sense. Everybody has confirmation bias when it comes to the internet culture, but you gotta, people have to learn to weigh the evidence, weigh what's presented against scripture, and make decisions in that way. You will know them by their fruits. And so, look, I really don't, and we as a podcast, we haven't talked about TPUSA, Erika Kirk, and a lot of the conspiracies surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the reason why we haven't is because, one, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like Candace Owen claims she's like she was texting Charlie Kirk and all. Okay, well, all right, sure, cool. Other people are coming in saying, "Oh, I need Charlie Kirk." And this, okay, all right. So now it's just a popularity contest on who's telling the truth or what's going on. Now people are skeptical of Erika Kirk, which there's some interesting things going on with Erika Kirk that may make early supporters of TPUSA a little uncomfortable with some of it, but the reason why we haven't gone down that road too much is because it's a real hot topic that doesn't have a lot of grounded critical thinking. Either people are buying into the FBI narrative that it was a transgender man and this is a hate crime and that this is a radicalized individual of a trans person and we should be talking about the trans problem, which I feel like we have been for about 15 years, but okay, that is an issue. I even had a comment on the last video. You guys are complicit with the trans shooter guys. You're not talking about the trans shooter. That means you're supporting the trans shooter. It's like, no, that's not what's going on either, but whatever, that's fine. You're allowed to think that. You're allowed to comment that. I am not going to mute you. I'm not going to delete your comment because you have some opposing opinions about this stuff. But I'll share some of my opinions on some of this. And this went viral over the weekend. Of course, America Fest was over the weekend, and there was Ben Shapiro screaming at people and stuff. And the part that really caught my attention, though, was Erika Kirk featuring Nicki Minaj. And if you don't know who Nicki Minaj is, she's a rapper. She's a music artist. But the way this... Okay. We know TPUSA is a political organization. And as far as I know, there really has never been, especially since the turn of the new century here in the 21st century, I don't know that there's been a political group like TPUSA or any other political group that is not compromised in some way, shape, or form. It's just hard for me to believe that when it comes to the power of influence that these organizations hold and the amount of money that gets not only raised, but, spent on various things like this big rally here for America Fest. It's hard for me to believe that it is just all on the up and up. And it doesn't make me complicit with Democrats or anything like that. It's just my natural skepticism of politics in the 21st century. That's why we play this jingle all the time.
It's Latin for many. Tick. Now suck your blood. Now politics your blood.
I think it's meant to distract us, to mislead us, and do so in the most nefarious way, which is to appeal to our emotions, our feelings. And depending on your worldview about this whole issue with TPUSA and the Charlie Kirk assassination, you're going to feel differently about this clip of Erika Kirk introducing Nicki Minaj at America Fest. There's fireworks. They're walking out onto the stage. They're waving. Everyone's cheering. Everyone's standing up. I mean, this looks like an entrance to a WWE wrestling match or something. They're playing a little Nicki Minaj in the background. I'm going to get copyright for that. And now everyone's cheering. Oh, it's so wonderful. There's Nicki Minaj. Wow. Incredible. And actually, I think there were a couple Freudian slips in there a few times. I didn't pull the clip, but I believe Nicki Minaj, I don't know, accidentally maybe said that J.D. Vance was the assassin of Charlie Kirk or something. Anyway, stuff like that's happening all the time. But Nicki Minaj is a very interesting individual to present at TPUSA because in the past, we used to do these Illuminati exposed videos. Nicki Minaj popped up quite a bit in some of those videos because she would say things like this. Roman is a crazy boy. I'm going to keep going here. Who lives in me.
And he says the things that I don't want to say. He was born, just a few months ago. I think he was born out of rage. He was conceived in rage. He bashes everyone. He threatens to beat people, and he's violent. He wants to be blamed. I don't want to blame him. I ask him to leave. but he can't. He's here for a reason. People have brought him out. People conjured him up. Now he won't leave.
People conjured him up. She is talking about a demonic entity who has influenced her in certain ways, maybe with her lyrics, maybe with whatever she's up to. She's talking about a spiritual entity, Roman. She's got a name for him, who was conjured, born out of rage, says the things that I don't want to say, but he says it. This is very, very common. Very common. MK Ultra, mind control. You study all of those things. Russ Dizdar was brilliant at explaining all these things because he was boots on the ground, tackling satanic ritual abuse. But he often discussed these issues where he would say the basic procedure for trauma-based mind control, when you're talking about it spiritually, this is not just psychology or whatever. We're talking spiritual warfare. The concept, and you know, rest assured, the elite and the intelligence ops, they know about this. You create the trauma. The trauma splits the personalities. And then once the personalities are split, they're able to assign entities or demons to those split personalities so that they remain submerged. But then when a certain trigger happens or certain emotions pop up, those demons can come to the surface. And this is very common. This isn't just Nicki Minaj. Beyonce has talked about her, I forget the name of her entity or whatever. Almost all of these celebrity famous musicians talk about these other entities that whisper or is their friend, or that, you know, they have these different ways to describe it. But this is the person that Erika Kirk is bringing on stage with fireworks. And look, I don't know where she is now. This is a long time ago for Nicki Minaj. Maybe she's repented. Maybe she's really fallen for Christ and she's following the Lord, and, you know, she just wants to do right and all this stuff. Of course, that's a possibility. But in light of her who she is, and, you know, who the kind of clips that are out there prior, it's not good. It's not. And the part that really I think a lot of people are pointing out is that there's a Charlie Kirk interview somewhere. Let me try to find it here. And I think they edited the clip here so that it's, you know, people are pointing it out. But here's Charlie Kirk from a while ago discussing Nicki Minaj.
Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on, I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't.
Okay, so they're going to start playing some of the clips of Nicki Minaj and some of the, you know, less I don't know, wholesome lyrics that she has in her songs. But yeah, Charlie Kirk, there's clips of Charlie Kirk going around saying that Nicki Minaj is not a good role model for young black women. And then, of course, Erika Kirk comes out with Nicki Minaj on stage to cheers. Right? I mean, again, this isn't like, I'm not throwing conspiracy theories about Erika Kirk out there, other than this is weird. And, you know, there's all sorts of rumors out there that you can jump onto, like, oh, it sounds like she had a prior relationship to Charlie Kirk and even had a child with that person. I don't know. Those are rumors. I can't verify that. Who knows? There's all kinds of stuff out there coming out now. And that's the rabbit hole, right? The rabbit hole that people, the social engineers, they probably want you in those rabbit holes because it is so enticing and interesting for people, especially if they're new to these topics. It's like, oh, I want to go figure out the secret. Let me find the secret information about Erika Kirk. And it's like, oh, it's just public information, guys. Like, yeah, you can dig it up. You can recontextualize it today in this sort of conspiracy framework. But to what end? To what end at that point? Okay. And there's a couple different things that I want to go to here. Oh, okay. So the big thing here, the reason why Erika Kirk, Charlie Kirk is still a topic of conversation is because it has to do with foreign policy. It has to do with modern nation state Israel, right? So here's Kash Patel, head of the FBI, saying what he thinks about Israel.
We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel and bring home Israelis and make sure we stand by our number one ally in Israel.
A lot of Israel talk. A lot of Israel talk coming from Kash Patel. Kash Patel also said that there's no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein enticed underage women. You know, it's the same guy. So, and the FBI, in fact, it's this whole operation with Kash Patel and Bongino has been such a bad look for the FBI that Bongino is leaving the FBI in January. It must be really bad if you're, and maybe this is, you know, positive points for Bongino. Like, look, you know, maybe he's got to the point where he's like, I can't lie to the people. I just can't do it. And I'll tell you, this is just personal experience. Okay. This is anecdotal. Let me tell you an anecdotal thing about something that I experienced. Okay. And I've told this story before, but again, this is anecdote. This is not and I'm going to go into something actually that is very important after this. So I used to work at a Jewish community center. I was the swim coach at the facility there, and I ran some of the swim programs and pool stuff. And I kind of went up the ranks over time. And at a certain point, they asked me to take over as the director of aquatics. Great. So I did that. And it came time for fundraiser time, right? Because I'm at a Jewish community center. I worked at a Jewish community center. And the mandate each year was that we raise money for the community center. So I started to do a little campaigning with the parents of the children that I was coaching. And I said, hey, you know, we're doing this fundraiser for the Jewish community center here. And, you know, we would love for you to support the cause or whatever. Right. Well, all the parents started to ask questions because the guy before me raised like $20,000 the year before. And he made all these promises. We're going to have underwater music. We're going to have pool lights. They didn't have lights at the pool. So at night, like during the winter, because, you know, if you're on swim team and club, you're swimming all year. I love that. That's funny. Panda upgrade saying Gon's admitting he worked for them. Yeah, sure. I did work at a Jewish community center at one point. So yes, put it out there. Yeah, Gon's confirmed. Mossad confirmed. So I was asked to raise this money. These parents said, no, we're not giving a dime. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, you guys promised underwater music. You guys promised pool lights so we can see what's going on when it gets dark. You guys promised new parkas, new whatever, new Speedos, whatever it was. None of it happened. And so I go to my boss and I'm like, hey, boss man, I'm trying to do this thing that you want me to do with this campaigning, but all the parents are saying that nothing from last year was fulfilled. And so what do you want me to do about that? And almost verbatim, and look, again, this is anecdotal, and this is how I remembered what happened. Almost verbatim, he told me, just lie to them. Just bigger promises. Tell them you'll get the stuff, but just let them know. Tell them what they want to hear. And I was like, you want me to lie to them about this stuff? And they're like, yeah. I mean, it's fine. You just got to get them. We got to just raise the money. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can do that. Like, I don't feel that doesn't feel right, you know? And then I find out that I think it was like 85 or 90% of the money that gets raised by the swim team was actually going to go to the community center. And then like 10% was going to go to the actual swim team. So then I was also like, well, I'm having a hard time here being like a front man to raise all this money, maybe like $20,000, and 18 of it goes to the community center and 2 of it goes to the actual people that raise the money. I don't know. It's not really feeling great for me. Guess what, guys? I was fired. I was fired like 2 weeks later because of some nonsense. Really, some nonsense. They actually plotted against me. I think they came up with some really, really suspect accusations and some quote unquote complaints from some parents who, when I talked to them personally, they were like, "No, I didn't call the community center or do anything." So it was a very bizarre situation. That's anecdotally, okay? So and that's me at a community center, okay? Imagine what people in the FBI or government or these institutions, imagine what they're being asked to do. I would imagine one would want to get a hot iron and just sear their conscience so they can carry out the plan, the objective. And maybe it's because of these experiences that I have my views of what I do, but it's not because, and I love the people at the JCC. It was called the JCC. I love the people there. There were wonderful people that I worked with, that I became friends with. And, it wasn't about like, oh, these are such evil people. It was more of like their ideology when it came to some of these issues, especially with like money and fundraising and stuff like that. It was just not my thing. I just couldn't do it. It was like, I can't just like lie to people to raise money. But some people were very good at it. They were very, very good at it. I was not. I was never good at it. And so therefore my career in that type of environment was very short-lived. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I let everybody know how I feel about things, and that gets me into trouble all the time. And so anyway, that's as a microcosm. I brought it up because I would imagine Kash Patel being told to say these things. Maybe he's doing it, believing that he is doing what is in the best interest of the greater population of the United States or Western civilization or whatever the narrative is. And there are nuggets of truth to it. I'm not going to say it's completely nonsensical, but overall, it's really pushing an agenda that I don't think a majority of people, number one, care too much about. They're being asked to care about it now because I believe there is a purpose for riling up and stirring up a revolution and divide and conquer, especially of conservatives. And maybe conservatives who have been pointing out the woke right and woke, I can't even say it anymore, woke right, blaming them or accusing them. There's something maybe said of like, hey, you're dividing the conservatives, you're dividing the evangelical side of politics. And they're right about that. They're like, yeah, it's true. They are dividing, but also you're participating in that division by calling them anti-Semitic heretics. Think about what's happening here. Divide and conquer is a very, very powerful tool. So all that being said, a couple narratives that I see popping up with some of this is that by being complicit with the the woke right and the America First camp and, the alleged anti-Semites, you are being complicit with Hamas. You are being complicit with Islam. You are supporting Islam. You are supporting the terrorists in Palestine if you are against modern nation state Israel. And to that, I present to you this old clip of Representative Ron Paul.
Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you said, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage the Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas.
Yes, this is a very famous clip from Ron Paul, really outlining some of the Middle Eastern issues. He's been on it for a long time when it comes to this stuff. Thomas Massey seems to be the guy carrying the torch. And the problem, though, is that now it is full on up. This view, which I think Ron Paul is on target here with sort of the reality of the situation. The time he said it, I don't think necessarily Ron Paul was called anti-Semite or anything because of this statement. Maybe some people did. But really, there wasn't a whole lot you can do about it because it was not a popular enough view. It wasn't, the American public was not aware of these issues as much. Now, the conversation has always existed in smaller circles of truth seekers. But when it comes to majority, the mass public, it was not discussed other than, maybe Ron Paul stating things like this. Now in 2025, it is full-blown op. It is full-blown America first. Let's pull Nick Fuentes up to the front. Let's pull Candace Owens into this conversation. Let's make Tucker Carlson the anti-Semite of the year. I think I have that story. Do I have that story in here? Maybe I took it out, or maybe I forgot to put the link in there. I'll pull it up real quick. But yeah, Tucker Carlson has been named the anti-Semite of the year, which is I think it's kind of funny. It is pretty funny. The Economic Times. Oh yeah, this. Okay. I had to. I said something on X about this because I thought it was hysterical. This is the Economic Times, India, right? And for those of you who are familiar with the show, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act in 2014, when Obama reversed the propaganda laws basically for the United States after World War II, they put in this thing called Smith-Mundt Act where they're like, okay, we cannot disseminate propaganda in the United States. Well, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act in 2014 reversed it by allowing propaganda to disseminate in America, but do so in this very sneaky way, which is to let foreign outlets carry the story, and then the American journalistic outlets can quote those foreign outlets so as to be journalists and not the ones actually reporting these things, right? And it's almost like they're washing dirty money. When you launder money, you got to like put it through a system that makes it official. And that's kind of what they do here with the news, where you get some piece of news and you put it through the Economic Times India. And we've noticed that India is very useful in this laundering process. They do a lot of news stories that are like, why are they even talking about this? And then you realize, oh, it's being quoted by the Economic Times in America, or Newsweek or something like that. But the Economic Times here, US, they have this headline: Tucker Carlson wins anti-Semite of the year. Award by Jewish organization joins Candace Owens and rapper Ye. Yes, Candace Owens, everybody. They didn't even fix the spelling of Candace. It says Candace. Cnadanc. Is that some kind of Indian accent for Candace? Candace Owens. I don't know. I'm gonna get in trouble. And it says here, the synopsis: podcaster Tucker Carlson has been named Anti-Semite of the Year by Stop Anti-Semitism. Oh, that group that keeps getting a lot of. Oh, the group that wants to censor everybody. That group. The Jewish civil rights group cited his platforming of controversial figures and promotion of anti-Semitic tropes. Carlson won through a public vote, facing other nominees. I like how they're trying to make it sound like what is it with these awards? What is it with all these awards? Why? Like, it's this weird Babylonian magic trick that, like, if you win an award, somehow you are special in one way or another, right? You win a Grammy, oh, you're fantastic. You're an incredible musician. You win an Emmy, oh, you must be a great director. You must be a great movie producer. If you win the Anti-Semite of the Year, oh, you must be the greatest anti-Semite the world has ever seen. Tucker Carlson, great job. Here's a trophy for your anti-Semitism. This award follows previous recipients like Candace Owens and rapper Ye. The group highlighted his interview with Nick Fuentes and remarks on Zionism. Okay, so the precedent is being set, ladies and gentlemen, and whether you agree or disagree with the conversation about political Zionism, American politics with some kind of alliance with Israel, modern nation state Israel, for geopolitical purposes, those arguments are fine and dandy. Okay, I think there's a place to have these discussions, but I think there's some issues, or some hypocrisy even maybe, with some of the folks who came out and spoke out against people on the left canceling people on the right. This is The Intercept with the headline: Anti-Palestinian billionaires can now control what TikTok users see. Now, remember, folks, remember, I'm just going to tie some dots together for you. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just literally facts. Okay. TikTok was a creation of China, right? China controlled all the servers. Okay. For years, they were going to shut down TikTok, whatever, because China's influence on American youth. So what happened? They sold TikTok to who? Oracle, whose founder happens to be very buddy with the modern nation state of Israel. I believe, I don't know if he is Jewish. He might be. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. But there you go. So now you have TikTok has become basically an effective propaganda tool, no longer for China, but it is now one for Israel. Now, does that make it any better? And put aside all the politics, put aside all that stuff. Does any group, any country, any nation, any intelligence, whoever, having this kind of soft power, it is soft power, by the way, because it's quiet, it's algorithms, it's people you don't know behind the computers, behind the code, influencing what y'all think, what y'all children think.
We are a global production company.
And I play that clip all the time of an alleged Mossad agent or retired Mossad agent, Israeli intelligence, on 60 Minutes with Barbara Walters with a face mask and glasses. You can't even see his face. And he's talking about how the world is a stage and how we are the actors and we're a global production company.
We are a global production company.
That's Israeli intelligence, okay? And now they have control of TikTok. All right, it says here, users need to revolt against what will likely be an even more widespread effort to censor voices critical of Israel. Now, wouldn't that be something, folks, that the Canary Cry world gets shut down because we spoke too much truth about COVID. And now we're going to get shut down by the modern nation state of Israel because we're not because we're hostile. Like personally, I'm not hostile towards any Jewish people. In fact, I would love to spread the gospel to them, speak about Jesus. Jesus was a descendant of the ancient Near East peoples that were identified as Jewish Israelis. That is a lineage. Now, again, post-resurrection, post-Pentecost, post-70 AD, things get really interesting. Things get really complicated. There are passages in scripture that discuss the dispersion of those folks, but not just in the context of the tribe of Judah, but also in the context of the 10 lost tribes. And if you're talking about all of Israel, then we're talking about people that are scattered all over the world anyway, not just through the diaspora post-70 AD. So these are all theological nuances that I think we all need to and I'm working at it too, folks. I'm really going because I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. I really had these moments the last few weeks where I'm like, maybe I'm wrong about this stuff because I saw a lot of really, not super popular, but like more well-known Christian podcasters and YouTubers and stuff. They were all like supporting the narrative that, hey, we got to shut down Tucker Carlson, shut down Nick Fuentes, shut down Candace Owens. We must push back against them. They're cult leaders. They're this, they're that. And, there's a moment where I was like, oh, maybe they're onto something. Maybe they're right about some of that theologically from scripture. And then I go back and look at scripture and I'm just like, I have a real hard time putting the modern nation state and all of its geopolitics and putting some kind of like barrier, some kind of iron dome around them where you cannot criticize them at all because they are the chosen race of people. And it's kind of like, isn't that racist? It's racism when you push down on a particular group of people because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity or whatever, right? But is it also a type of racism when you're just lifting them up and putting them on a pedestal and like making them like the most important people that we must all bow down to? I mean, not that that's happening exactly, but conceptually here. And I think it's just as bad. So let's read this real quick. Not the whole thing. I'll run through some parts here. The TikTok deal announced on Thursday poses a fundamental threat to free and honest discourse about Israel's ongoing genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. Now, again, this is The Intercept, so they're going to have their flavor on things. They have been more pro-Palestine than they have been pro-Israel, obviously. And this is part of the problem with this conversation, is that if you are perceived as pro-Palestine, you are also going to be labeled by pro-Israel people as complicit with Hamas, supporting terrorism, which, by the way, and this is what I want to tell those conservatives who are saying that to people on the other side of the argument, labeling them as complicit with Hamas. I want to bring up that Ron Paul video clip, right? Just be like, look, a lot of the terror, like the Islamic terror that is being the biggest threat in the world right now. We had the massacre last week in Australia. A lot of that comes from intelligence operations in the West. Whether by design or by accident, our intelligence in the West, and that includes the US and that includes Israel, are involved in arming those radical groups. And a lot of times, you know, in the history books, it's being written as like, oh, it was a mistake. Oh, it was a backfire. We were trying to equip the other group to push back against the terrorists, right? I mean, oopsie doodle. They took all the weapons, you know? And it's troubling because it's either gross negligence, right? It's either absolute incompetence by the intelligence community for messing up that badly that you would send all these weapons to a place, for example, Nigeria right now. Everyone's talking about, no one's talking about the Islamic problem in Nigeria killing all of these Christians, the Boko Haram. Well, how did the Boko Haram even rise? It wasn't because there was just a random revolution that took place. No, Western intelligence has been in there for a long time, ever since 2009, specifically for the current iteration. And, you know, people have talked about the blowback because NATO went in there and NATO was like, oh, we're gonna figure this out, guys. We're gonna walk in here, give you guys some weapons. We're gonna negotiate. We're gonna figure this out. We're NATO. We're the West. Okay, we're gonna make sure things are all right. What happened? Boko Haram gets all the weapons. they get armed to the teeth, right? And then now they are a serious problem for just your common citizen. And a lot of what's happening in the world today is a result of, and I'm trying to create a graphic or a meme for this because it's hard to explain it all, but I want to try to do it in one image, which is somewhat difficult to do. But a lot of what's happening is a small group of people will do something that's morally questionable. Those same people happen to have a lot of power and influence in the world, and so they will trickle out different narratives for journalists, for the public to start consuming. And then once those narratives seep deep enough into the general public, now you have a division, a political division, where you got masses of people arguing with each other about this issue or that issue, whatever it may be, you know, all the nuances involved. But usually it stems from some morally questionable or even reprehensible decisions by a very small group of people. Now, were those people, and what the thing that we do wrong as the mass public is we want everything bite-sized. We want everything to be simple. We want it. We want that phrase, "You will own nothing and be happy." We want that. Everyone, hey, it's the Jews doing it all. We want that to be the true statement because it just helps identify a much more nuanced and a much more detailed and mind-bending type of situation going on. Hey, maybe some of the elite people who made morally reprehensible decisions, maybe they were Jewish, maybe they were Jesuits, maybe it's Xi in China. You know, these people in power are very few. It's not that many people, okay? There are very few people who have a unbalanced amount of power. And it's not even just these political figures that we see. Oftentimes, it is not the people we see. Absolutely not the people we see. The people we see are the ones that are presented to the public to consume as the puppets of whatever message or narrative or whatever it might be. So we don't know exactly what's going on with those individuals. I stated in Age of Deceit 1, the first one, I stated that a lot of the world leaders and stuff that are complicit in, you know, building the New World Order and doing all these things, they're actually somewhat victims in a sense. Now, they may have freely decided to do what they're doing, but they are in a sense somewhat victims of the satanic deception. Okay. And so to get them out of it and to really have them turn to Jesus Christ, that's the ultimate goal, not some political agenda. Okay. Because oftentimes these people are caught in some kind of compromising situation, enter Epstein, and they are forced to do these things or say these things. And then that shapes culture. It shapes the debate of culture. It contextualizes the debate for the masses. And when you start thinking about these things in that sort of grandeur view of things, a sociological analysis of all of this, you start to realize like, wow, we're a bunch of sheep, man. We just love to latch on to whatever is the debate. And look, I'm just as guilty. Okay. I'm in there debating with some of these issues. But every time I do that, I tend to stop and I tend to step back and go, okay, all right, that's enough for today or whatever, because ultimately, what am I trying to do here? I'm not trying to, change this person's mind or whatever. And, I like a good debate, but that's not the ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal really is about, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's educate each other on what we think about this stuff, but ultimately point to Christ, point to the word of God, because that's where you're going to find real truth and real actual freedom. That's not just carnal, but spiritual, eternal, cosmic, all those things. And so I say all this to say that it's usually a very small group of people doing things. And regardless of what those small group of people identify themselves as, or regardless of what they are, they trickle down the narrative, and then the narrative goes to the massive, and then the masses are arguing with each other. And the masses get to kind of play the game, so to speak, right? It's kind of like sports. I always do the sports analogy. And it's kind of like a sports team or a sports league where you have the commissioner, but really it's not the commissioner who runs any sports organization. It's the owners. It's the council of owners of the teams. And if they want something, they will make it happen. And then it'll trickle down to the teams and to the players. And then the players have to comply to those new rules or whatever it may be. So it's a good analogy for all this stuff in my mind, because it shows sort of the hierarchy of things that operate in this fallen world. And then you go to the scriptures, we know, and I've mentioned this plenty of times, how when Jesus was tempted in the desert, Satan came and he showed him the splendors of all the kingdoms. And he said, I will give you all of this if you kneel and bow down to me. And Jesus says, Satan, behind me. Right. And there's this moment, this powerful moment. And then in that message, in that rejection, that Jesus pushes back on the king, getting the kingdoms of the world, which, by the way, he is the ultimate creator of all. He is the one that technically owns all of it. It's not Satan. He's, sort of the occupier, so to speak. So there's that. But also Jesus knowing that, no, I'm not going to worship you for this stuff. This is ridiculous. But I would imagine that same offer that Jesus received in the desert is offered to many people who are in positions of power and influence in this world. Maybe not directly from Satan himself, but the Antichrist spirit, I believe, is palpable when it comes to some of these folks in high places. And I think that's why people get compromised, people lose their minds, people do things that are just like, what are you doing, man? Like, what is in your thought process that you think this is okay or normal or whatever it may be? And we as viewers of all that stuff we have been conditioned to formulate opinions about all these things and then regurgitate them and then argue about it online, which again, all of us are a little bit guilty of. But okay, sorry. Rant over for now for the setup. The TikTok deal announced Thursday poses a fundamental threat to free speech and honest discourse about Israel's ongoing genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. Under the reported deal, the Chinese company that owns the short video social media app ByteDance will transfer control of TikTok's algorithms and other U.S. operations to a new consortium of investors led by the U.S. technology company Oracle. The long gestating deal will give Oracle's billionaire pro-Trump board members Larry Ellison and Safra Katz the power to impose their anti-Palestinian agenda over the content that TikTok users see. Most mainstream U.S. media coverage of the TikTok deals has completely ignored the explicitly anti-Palestinian agenda of its biggest Western investors. TikTok has played a critical role in helping hundreds of millions of users see the ugly reality of Israel's genocidal war in Gaza. But the Trump-favored billionaires who will take over TikTok's U.S. operations have a documented agenda of both suppressing voices critical of Israel and supporting the very Israeli military that has killed so many Palestinian civilians. Oh, man. So here you go. I'm not going to go through the rest of it here, but you get the gist of it here. You know, if you are for free speech, why censor at all? If you are truly not in a situation that is morally questionable, you know, if I'm trying to think of like a really basic example of this. If I steal something from a store, like me and a friend or something, and my friend is saying, "Yep, we did it. We stole," and I want to say, and I want to silence him because I want to get off. Like, I know I stole, but I don't want to get in trouble for it. So be quiet, friend. Tape over your mouth. Don't say a word. Right? Let me tell the story. Right? That's kind of what's happening here. It's like, why can't we have open discourse about this topic? And it's coming to a head. 10 years ago, the common sort of, not saying, but a common trope about this particular issue of modern nation state Israel, geopolitical Zionism, and all this stuff. The question that was often brought up in conversation was, who are you not allowed to criticize? And it's pretty clear. It's the Jews. You can criticize, well, let me rephrase it. For a while, you weren't allowed to criticize anybody, trans, gay, homosexual, whatever, all these different things. You weren't allowed to criticize them. But now that whole thing has backfired, right? And in light of that backfiring, it's like all the distractions were gone now. And now, you know, sort of the big issues are at play when it comes to geopolitics. And it's always the case that the people that are not the people, the groups, the ideas, let me just be more broad. The ideas that are not popular and that maybe the perpetrators of those ideas know is morally objectable or objectionable. I don't know what word I'm trying to think of. Morally wrong, okay? Just wrong. Why would you need to censor other people from having that conversation or asking those questions if you're not guilty? It's just a straight question. That is a question. Now, given this mandate here, if they really do implement this, and not just TikTok, but across social media, you better bet. Guess who's getting censored again, folks? Guess whose X accounts and Rumble accounts and whatever, all these different things. Whose accounts are going to disappear? Hello, the Canarians are going to disappear again because we're not allowed to even ask these questions. And I'm there was a clip. I didn't bring it, but there was a clip of Ben Shapiro. I don't know if it was over this past weekend, but somebody was asking about the 1967 war and how the U.S. battleships got taken down, and the Israelis knew that it was America because it was an American flag on the ship, and yada yada yada. Now Ben Shapiro comes back and says, "You can't." You know his voice. I don't know. I don't do Ben Shapiro impressions, but he was basically like, "You can't take a war situation from 1967 and apply it to contemporary modern politics in 2025." And my immediate thought is, "Oh, Ben Shapiro, if that's the case, you better never, ever bring up the Holocaust. You better never, ever bring up World War II as some kind of moral, high ground for your arguments." Right? So I don't know, Ben Shapiro is getting a lot of attention right now because a lot of Christian conservatives are like, "Oh, Ben Shapiro's right. He's right about this whole thing. He's spot on." And there's like this refound love with Ben Shapiro, which I think is kind of weird. And he's like kind of taking over TPUSA, which I also think is a little weird. But so I don't know. Where was I going with this? I think I was going with this whole censorship idea. Why are we censoring anybody? Censorship should happen in the home, at the family level. Or, if you want to do more judicial censorship at some like local level, maybe you live in a neighborhood that is got a lot of kids in it or something like that. Maybe you and your neighbors can come up with some policy or do something to protect the innocence of your children, things like that. It should not be a top-down issue with applications that a majority of people in this world use. But it's been that way. It's how the whole woke thing happened in the first place. Right? The whole left woke thing. I forgot about it. I had a jingle for the woke. Let's see if I can find it here.
Are you even woke?
Woke up, man.
Yeah. So it's been a problem. It's been a problem. Why? And here's my issue here, in the hypocrisy I'm seeing with some of these Christian folks who I respect, is that they were pushing back on censorship before. They were saying free speech, free speech. Those same people are out here saying, we need to censor. We need censorship. We need to censor the anti-Semites. You can't have it both ways. You really can't. And not enough in these conversations about censorship are we discussing personal responsibility. We're just not. Personal responsibility, folks. Your home, as a parent, you have control over what your children see in the home anyway. Can't always control them what they see at friends' houses or whatever it may be. But in terms of in your home, you have control over that. So use that authority in your home. If these conversations are coming up in even public discourse, it should be allowed to happen. I'm not going to you guys know how I feel about this, but it's almost beside the point. We're getting to a level now where people's opinions don't matter as much. Like, the focus should be, why is this even allowed to happen? We just thought we got to win, quote unquote, a win with platforms like X, that doesn't work great all the time. $45 billion app owned by the world's richest man, $750 billion worth, Elon Musk. It's troubling to me. It's troubling. And I hope we can have fruitful discussions before we just start censoring everybody. But I fear that is not going to be the case. I fear that people like me are going to be labeled anti-Semitic. If you like this podcast, you might be labeled anti-Semitic. And it might not be from Jewish people. It's probably going to be from conservatives and Christians who disagree with you on geopolitical Israel and modern political Zionism. And that's unfortunate, because if you can't have that conversation and you can't crack open a Bible and have a good study with one another, iron sharpens iron. It should be a great conversation, a great Bible study for people. But I'm not seeing, I would argue that we're probably not going to see a whole lot of fruit from this type of thing. Okay. I think I'm done with that rant. There's more to this. Charlie Kirk is publishing a book about seeking the Sabbath, and it's got 119 pages. People are pointing out that's 9/11 backwards. And did he even really write the book? And this goes against other quotes of alleged Charlie Kirk saying that, hey, the America is occupied and stuff like that. And again, a lot of it is coming from personal text messages and relationships Charlie had with individuals that are speaking publicly about things now. And that makes this whole topic incredibly difficult to navigate, because we have no idea who's lying. We know the FBI lies, so it's kind of hard to buy the FBI narrative. We know a lot of high-level influencers, whether it be Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens, they have an agenda to push. So, okay, you may be able to agree with something they said in a vacuum, But if you're looking at the whole thing, the greater picture of what's happening, hard to trust either of them. So who do you trust in this situation? And at a certain point, it just becomes useless banter and quarrel that, Paul tells us not to quarrel, live peaceably amongst one another. And I think we can live peacefully with people. I know I can live with somebody who's pro-Israel, who's a neighbor. There's pro-Israel people at my church. I'm fine to fellowship with them. Let's have this conversation. Let's crack open our Bibles. Let's do a Bible study. Let's pray about it. It's not a do or die situation, but it is becoming so embedded in cultural debate and it's being stoked by operations. I believe some of the massacres that have happened don't come out of a vacuum either. And it's not just because, anti-Semitism is rising and therefore, hey, look at that guy who felt compelled to, go shoot a bunch of people in Australia, or even the trans issue. Oh, you look at the trans issue, you ignored it, and so therefore, we have this radicalized guy, and now he's shooting people, and he shoots and kills Charlie Kirk. We don't know anything anymore. In 2025, the only truth, is Jesus Christ. The rest is just kind of cool convo, bro. Good convo, bro. I mean, ultimately, if we're talking about what's at stake and what's most important when it comes to this stuff, it's not to win a political argument. And I think most people are just trying to win the political argument, and not everybody, but a lot of people are. And it's unfortunate because I think it's confusing people who may not be as deep as some of us are into these topics, and may not have studied, may not have done their due diligence, and that's not their fault. It's just the way the world is, and the way 2025 is. There's so much information out there now that can affirm your bias that you can just find whatever to do so. Okay, here's an example, and I'm going to call out some names here, and this is not to start a debate or start any kind of thing. These are just examples of, I've been saying a lot of like people I respect, right? Like people that I've, Christians that are content creators that I respect, who are, kind of, I don't know, taking on some missions that I don't know are necessarily, I don't know, legitimate in a sense. Mike Winger. All right. Mike Winger has done some great work on biblical marriage, on a lot of topics. Actually, he's done a pretty good job of a lot of things. But on this particular issue, he's been, first of all, they can't stop tweeting about it. Like every single day they're talking about Erika Kirk or Candace Owens, or every single day. And rightfully so. They're getting a lot of interaction from it. X is really boosting these posts. So I don't blame them necessarily. But here's Mike Winger. He said, Christians who entertain speculative theories about Erika Kirk are violating biblical commands to care for widows and orphans. I mean, you are sinning. Okay, so Mike Winger is basically saying that I have sinned today on this podcast for entertaining speculative theories about Erika Kirk because she is a widow. Now, I would question Mike. I'd say, okay, what does care for the widow and orphans, what does it mean? Because, like, what I'm going to send him money? Like, what do you want? Just leave him alone? We can do that. We can leave her alone. And she also, Erika Kirk said something interesting the other day. The people were highlighting, again, these are what people are saying, and this is what Erika Kirk said. I'm just the messenger here. But Erika Kirk, in one of her speeches, said, and this is a nuanced thing, she said something to the effect of, once Charlie was assassinated, instead of more, like after Charlie was assassinated. And the people that were commenting were suggesting that it's a weird thing to say because it's conditional. Like, the things that happened and all this once Charlie was assassinated, as if it was like premeditated. I don't know. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to that, but those are the kinds of conversations and speculative theories, to Mike's point here, that are happening about Erika Kirk. Okay. So, all right. Maybe not the most fruitful thing to have speculative theories, but what does it mean to care for the widow and the orphans in this context? Erika Kirk is wealthier than a lot of us. She has more fame and popularity than ever before. She is being skyrocketed as the face of a multi-million-dollar organization, a political activist motivation group. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you want me to do, Mike Winger. I'm not going to sit here and necessarily speculate on theories about Erika Kirk, but I don't know if I'm sinning if I'm like, I don't know if I trust her. You know, look, if it's one thing if I see Erika Kirk crying in the street and people are ignoring her or, you know, spitting on her or something, and then, hey, let's not spit on her. Let's give her some food, whatever. Right? That's one thing, or an orphan for that regard. But she's walking out on stage with fireworks with Nicki Minaj. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you want. Like, what does it mean to care for the widow in this case? Right. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't know why Mike Winger is like a really deep thinker about biblical topics and culture and stuff. So it's like confusing me why this is like, why they're willing to die on this hill. It's very strange to me. And I'm not even saying he's getting money from Mossad or something like that. I don't know. Who knows? But I'm not making any accusations like that. I have no idea. And maybe it's just his view on things, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But I don't like the shaming. I don't like the shaming of people who disagree with his political take. And I think that's where I'm drawing the line with some of this stuff. Let's not do what turns people off when it comes to, from the outside, especially looking in. You know, if you're not a believer and you're seeing Christians argue about this topic, it must look so ridiculous and absurd, because, you know, we're arguing about like who Israel is biblically, who's, you know, who are the Jews, who's whatever this, who's Zionists, what are the Zionists, here's another Mike Winger posts along these lines. Mike Winger said, I remember Tucker Carlson saying he hates Zionists the most. Candace Owens suggested that Calvary Chapel was a military operation coordinated by Jewish interests. I'm ordained through Calvary Chapel. Like, I don't know if he's saying that he is part of the military operation coordinated by Jewish interests, or if he's saying that he has not seen anything of the sort, being an ordained pastor through Calvary Chapel. Okay, I'm just having a little bit of fun there. And Joel Webben says Jews are parasites and the Holocaust is a false religion. And this recent tweet is from one of Webben's influences, Corey Mahler. I have no doubt that these guys would all think I am a Zionist and that their hatred of Jews will transfer directly to me and countless other faithful Christians just as soon as they decide the moment is right. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not in agreement with people like Mahler. I don't even know who this guy is. But there are people on X that are really overstating or being outspoken about, you know, anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, anti-Jewishism, whatever you want to call it. And they're taking, once again, as I mentioned earlier, the actions of a group of small number of people. And they may not be Jews. They may be, I don't know, but a small group of people. The narrative is that it's the Jews. It's the Jews. They're so bad. And rightfully so. If you look at culture, American culture especially, compared to the number of actual self-identifying Jews in the world, the number of people that are in positions of influence and power in terms of entertainment and banking and all this stuff, it's kind of crazy how much they are actually in those positions of power. So I can understand where someone like Corey Mahler is coming from, but he's not right either. Look what he says. He says, under Christian nationalism, Zionist pastors and teachers will receive capital punishment enacted very publicly. It's like, bro, what are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? And this is why years ago I said, Christians, beware of Christian nationalism. Okay? It's meant to radicalize you. But here's the problem. The opposite side, Mike Winger's side, also being radicalized in a sense. Maybe not in the same way as sort of the loud voices of America First's pro-America anti-Zionist crowd. And they come off, and I understand why they're, you know, pushing back. Mike Winger is talking back to these guys because it comes off in this sort of like cordial legacy world. It's very abrasive for a guy to come in and be like, there's going to be capital punishment. And if you're a Zionist pastor, you're all going to, get it, that kind of thing. It's very, it stokes emotion. It's very fired up, and I can understand why Mike Winger is responding in this way. But I also don't agree with the other side of this Corey Mahler guy. And this is why I've always said, man, do not die on the hill of any political movement, because it's meant to divide, conquer, and destroy. It's literally the things that the enemy does that the Bible says identifies what the enemy does, the arrows, the division. Now, of course, the truth of the gospel also does divide. Okay, but being divided because of truth is different from being divided because of little t truth of some kind of political agenda or political allegiance. So, there's a lot of this stuff going on, and my timeline is filled with it. And you can understand that's probably part of the op too, like making me absorb and look at all these things and have to comment on it and stuff. And I really think this is important to talk about, not just because it's not being discussed enough in this context, but it hopefully disarms a little bit of the hostility going on right now. For example, with Mike Winger, I'm sure Mike's algos, because of what he's talking about and his position on things, he's got like people like this Corey Mahler guy all over his timeline. So he's going to think, oh my goodness, this Christian nationalism, this anti-Zionist thing, it's a real threat. These people are complicit with Islam. It's a real threat. We need to take down Islam. Like it's this whole thing, when really it's just a very small number of people. It's not everybody. These are perception games. We're in a 5th generation war. Not everything you see and read and hear and everything, especially in the news and world events, it's meant to cause debate. It's meant to create strife. Okay, now I got involved. All right, I'm just as guilty. Okay, Mike Winger said a few days ago, Ben Shapiro was right, and this is in response to his speech at TPUSA, in saying that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, they all need to be censored. Right, that was Ben Shapiro's message. Which, okay, all right, we're for free speech, except speech against modern nation state Israel. And here's what I said in response a couple days later. I said, revolutions are manufactured. Now, this is stuff I've been ranting about for a while here. And you're just complying to the folks who present quote unquote logic. I'm talking to Mike. You're because Ben Shapiro does look like he has the moral high ground here, or the logical response to this. Because I'll admit, Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and all those, they're pushing out possibilities, potentials, and stuff. But first of all, I'm very skeptical of whoever Candace's handlers are. I believe they're of the Jesuit arm of the sort of world order, which is maybe partnered or maybe just another team in terms of some kind of public clashing between the Jesuits and the Zionists. I think it's a real thing. Maybe not like real at the very top, but in terms of culture, creating a new culture war, Jesuits versus Zionists seems to be the thing that is defining our current contemporary conservative infighting. So I said, revolutions are manufactured, and you're just complying to the folks who present logic, but nothing about how the world works is logical apart from the biblical world view. Do you guys agree with that? Let me know in the comments here. Taking sides politically is the death note. That's why I've never taken sides politically. Okay. All right. In response, Melissa Doherty, who I really respect Melissa's work. If you don't know who she is, she's done a lot of work on New Thought, which is actually older than a lot of the New Agey stuff that's out there in terms of its origin. It is New Age, but she's really identified how a lot of New Age ideas, topics have seeped into the modern church, and a lot of Christians are being slowly, subtly being misled and pulled away from truth by the language of New Thought. And she's done a good job breaking that stuff down. I know we've talked about these issues a lot. Age of Deceit, Fallen Angels, and the New World Order. We tied together the New Age religion, or the concepts of the New Age, with things like Theosophy, which also ties back to the Garden of Eden, all the way back with Gnosticism and all of that stuff, to the Fallen Angels, the whole thing. You guys who know, you guys know. So she's done a good job of identifying the New Thought movement and calling it out within the church. Recently, since the Charlie Kirk assassination, it's been all Charlie Kirk, it's been all Erika Kirk, it's been all Candace Owens from the Melissa Doherty account. And I've responded and, try to get her attention, especially because my wife really likes Melissa Doherty. My wife's a big fan of hers. So I've been kind of commenting on stuff, and she never responds to me. So I was like, you never respond. But she finally did. She responded, and here's what she said. She's talking to me here, okay? For someone who dislikes politics and says other people are radicalized and political, you say an awful lot about politics. You constantly post on our stuff about this. Yes, I do. I do. Thank you for noticing. You sound very political yourself. Oh, okay. Do I sound political? Okay. With respect, after looking at your profile, I'm not sure you're in any position to label others as radicalized or political. You sound radicalized and political yourself. Melissa, why are we? It's turning into ad hominems now. I'm sure you're not in any position. So I'm not in any position to label others radicalized or political. You sound radicalized and political yourself. Look, whether it's on the right or the left, we're all forced to care about politics right now. It's gross. Okay. Now I respond to this politely, but you have it backwards. Many of us are not filtering scripture through politics. Scripture informs how we assess politics. The standard should be scripture and truth, which aligns with reality and the laws of morality. Well, I agree with that. Okay, here's what I said in response. Okay, you finally responded. Thank you. Yay, I was so happy about that. No, my audience knows I've stated publicly for years that I hate politics because it divides people on false presuppositions. Okay? And I have not supported either side of the political aisle for years because my message has been the gospel in light of all the darkness that's actually emerging. And it's not just 20th century style anti-Semitism. Not to mention both parties have terrible histories of corruption. Quote, and this is what Melissa said, we're all forced to care about politics right now. She says it's gross, but that proves my point, Melissa. That statement right there proves my point. Who's forcing you? Who is forcing you? Hold on, where is that quote? You sound radical. We're all forced to care about politics right now. Who is forcing you to care about politics? I want her to answer that question. Who is it? It is gross. I agree. It is gross. And I also ask to what end? What is the purpose of focusing so much on politics? If it's not to win your vote or to win others' votes, then what is it? It's a sincere question. And it's the question that I've wrestled with, and it's the reason why I'm like, I don't know about politics, man. I don't know if I'll agree with this point or that point or a point some person makes on this political whatever platform. I have my opinions. But I stray from identifying with a party because of that. I don't want to die on the hill of any party. Because I identify myself as belonging to the kingdom of God, not any kingdoms of this world. And I get it. I know she understands this, okay? So I don't think I'm saying anything off kilter here. I quote her again. Scripture informs how we assess politics. The standard should be scripture and truth, which aligns with reality and the laws of morality. I said, amen. Have you considered the divine council worldview made popular by the late Dr. Michael Heiser and how it shapes how we ought to approach topics like this? And this is something I don't think anybody's really talking about. Our good friend Mike Heiser did talk about the divine council and how the heavenly court, the heavenly host, and how a lot of what God does to decree things into the world happens in sort of a council. It's like a political thing. It's a divine council. And so anything that happens on earth is an attempt to mirror this godly heavenly host, this godly council that exists right now. In fact, I believe it's 2 Kings. I'm trying to remember exactly the story off the top of my head. It's about, I've been ranting for a long time. I'm losing my breath here. The story of the spirit that will be a spirit of a lie for, hold on. I'm going to look it up because I don't want to make the wrong statement here, just to make sure. It's about 1 Kings 22. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne and all of the hosts of heaven standing beside him. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? Then a spirit came forward and said, I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you are to entice him and you shall succeed. So God decrees a spirit to be a lying spirit in the mouth of the prophets so that God's decree comes true. Okay? Now, this informs us of how God's heavenly counsel works. And it brings to question, and it definitely brought me up. I was like, wait a minute, God can't lie. Why is he allowing this spirit to lie? It's a very interesting sort of nuanced part of the biblical narrative, especially under the divine counsel worldview, that should inform us of how politics works. And I don't think enough people have explored that from our late friend, Dr. Michael Heiser's work. And maybe he doesn't, I'm sure he doesn't even want that. Like, he didn't want his work to inform anything political, but in my opinion, there's something there that we have not considered enough. Then I go on to say to Melissa, I respect your work on New Thought entering the church because I think it's been spot on. The cultural takes you've had recently, in my opinion, has been off, but I've never called you or other Christians names. The term radicalized, and the reason why she's brought that up is because she's responding to another post I made saying that this is, I think I said like, this is, you're being radicalized or you're sounding radicalized or something to that effect. The term radicalized, I believe, is appropriate for everyone in the context of the current political landscape. Okay? Especially if you're agreeing with the folks who says we need vengeance and retribution for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. How is that not radicalization? It's the same playbook all over the world. There's nothing new under the sun. So my point here is, I didn't use the word radicalized against Melissa to say like, oh, you're being radicalized like you're, jihad or something, right? That's not the kind of radicalization. But Jesse Waters, do you remember Jesse Waters right after the Charlie Kirk assassination? He's on Fox and he's saying, I'm radicalized because of this. I'm radical. We need to seek vengeance. We need retribution. And a lot of people that the likes of Melissa and Mike are agreeing with are the same people that are saying we need vengeance, we need retribution, all this stuff. So I'm not saying she is directly necessarily being radicalized in the way that the word is used right now with like terrorism, modern terrorism, the way it's been framed, but it is a form of radicalization. The Charlie Kirk assassination was a starting point for a type of radicalization in this country, whether you're on the America First side or the MAGA side. You are being radicalized. You're being radicalized to debate this topic over and over again and to maintain the commentary of the reality TV show of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and all these individuals, these talking heads who are, and they're all making nuggets of truth points, right? They're all making like little points that make sense. I don't know about Candace, but recently in terms of some of her stuff, but again, I don't know because I'm not in her camp of like seeing all of her text messages and all of her communications and stuff. Who knows? But in terms of the arguments being made, I've heard Tucker Carlson mention, I just want people to focus on America. I want America to be prioritized over other nations. Like his stuff comes off as really not innocent per se, but just like more neutral or more, less abrasive than how it's being framed as like anti-Semite of the year, Tucker Carlson. You know what I mean? So this whole thing is being stoked by somebody who is not us. Okay. And I'm not even talking about, it's the Jews or the Jesuits, those, sure. But it is a spiritual battle that is beyond what we can necessarily identify with a group or an institution. We do those things as a springboard to point out the true enemies who are not flesh and blood, principalities, powers, wickedness in high places. Interesting. Cosmic wickedness in high places. The new Gaza thing with the high place. Anyway, so the view I have, the biblical view I have on things, the way that my lack of wanting to die on a political hill is shaped is from the scriptures in a way that in my way, and this is anecdotally for me, I try to honor the biblical principles the best I can. And for me, it's not identifying with a particular political party. It may be for you, it may be for Mike, it may be for Melissa, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it's the name calling, it's sort of the ad hominems, it's the abrasiveness, which I admittedly, like in text form, I'm sure I come off as abrasive sometimes. Like, people don't know my voice necessarily. If you're reading something that just on X or something, you might think I'm like yelling at you or something, right? But I'm not necessarily yelling at anybody. I'm just sort of stating my opinions, and they can come off as hot topic or whatever. Like, it might come off as abrasive or attacking someone's person or something like that. It's really not my thing. Paul talks about in Philippians 4, live peaceably with one another, right? And I want to try to do that, okay, with all the believers out there. And from my experience, I have tried to have conversations with people who are on the other side of this, and I've had good conversations with people who disagree with me on some of these issues. But I've also experienced what can only be described as some kind of, I don't know, maybe the word is discrimination, and it's not like a race discrimination thing or a class thing. It's just a biblical eschatological view discrimination, where it's like, oh, you believe that? Oh, you don't believe Israel, the modern nation state in 1948, is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy? Oh, you're going to hell. You're going to hell, sir. You're not going to make it to heaven if you believe that. Okay. I didn't think it was that big of an issue, but if that's where you're taking it, okay, I'm sorry that we cannot have this conversation, or we cannot have a relationship that that could potentially, be fruitful for both of us. Iron sharpen iron, but I guess not, And so these are my experiences, and I'm not saying everyone has to agree with me. In fact, I invite disagreements. I don't always do debates. I don't like debates publicly per se, but I like to challenge my own views on things, because I am a fallible human who sees through a glass darkly. And in fact, this is a big position. It's a big part of archetypalism that I'm writing. The heart posture of believers when studying prophecy is so important. And I think it's more important now than ever before, because obviously certain types of interpretations have been weaponized, have been politicized for the explicit purpose of upholding political agendas. And it's one thing if you don't know those things and you haven't done the homework to you're just kind of going along with it, and you're just sort of lukewarm, and that's on you for being lukewarm on that stuff. But it's another thing to, if you start looking at the research, looking at it, and then you consciously decide to ignore some of that, and like consciously decide, like, there's maybe some good points made here, but I'm in deep with this side of the aisle, so I really can't say anything to stir the pot. I'll get eaten alive by both sides if I do that. And so I'm going to stay politically correct for my party. And I think that happens way too much now. I think that happens way too much. Okay. I think that's enough of a rant. Wow, it's been 2.5 hours already. Wow. Okay. See what happens when Basil's not here to like interrupt me. He's going to come back and he's going to go, what happened to the podcast? We're not on any platforms anymore. And I'm going to say, sorry, Basil. I spoke my thoughts and now we're censored because now we're labeled anti-Semites. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, but it's worse for him, because it's worse for him because he does share a lot of these views, but he's also, well, I won't speak for him, but we share a lot of these things, these views, but he does have a way about speaking on these issues are a little bit different. And no, we don't butt heads on this particular issue. But maybe like the way we talk about it, we do have conversations about how we talk about it, especially on air on public platforms such as these. All right, let's talk about a little bit of something else, still related adjacently to this topic of censorship.
Special thanks to our sponsor, Palantir.
Artificial intelligence. Surveillance state.
Yes, surveillance state. This is coming from the New York Post. The headline, Palantir CEO Alex Karp has spent a record $120 million for a 3,700-acre monastery near Aspen. Okay, a former monastery tucked into the mountains outside Aspen has quietly set a price record as Palantir Technologies co-founder and chief executive Alex Karp paid about $120 million for the vast Snowmass property. The sale surpasses all previous home deals in Pitkin County, Colorado, and reflects the rapid rise of nine-figure transactions in one of the country's most exclusive resort markets. The roughly 3,700-acre estate known as St. Benedict's Monastery sits about 30 minutes from Aspen and was owned for roughly 7 decades by an order of Trappist monks. Wow, Trappist monks owned a 3,700-acre estate. That's insane. Goes on here. The property was listed last year for $150 million by Ken Murr of Murr Ranch Group, who handled the sale, with his daughter Haley Murr and Michael Letusik of Douglas Elliman. Murr declined to identify the buyer publicly, but told the Wall Street Journal, which first reported on the sale, the purchaser intends to use the property as a residence. Okay, well, Murr declined, but New York Post will tell you it's Alex Karp of Palantir. The main monastery building, dating to the 1950s, spans about 24,000 square feet. Man, the maintenance on that must be crazy. And was designed with arched windows and architectural details inspired by the 12th century Cistercian Abbey. A roughly 6,000 square foot retreat center was added in the 1990s using reclaimed timber and local stone. I mean, this thing's like a true castle. Look at this thing. How do you even live on a property? Do people really need a place this big to live? I mean, who's going to live here along with Alex Karp? Is it just him and his family? Like, what's going on? Scattered across the land are early 1900s houses, cabins, barns, and outbuildings, while much of the acreage remains undeveloped and is bordered by national forests with multiple creeks running through it. Murr said the deal stood apart from the typical luxury transaction that dominate Aspen headlines. It isn't, quote, your typical sale of a property in Aspen with a 20,000 square foot home on it, he told the Journal. I mean, this is a magnificent piece of property, if I had to say. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I will say that. Because of land use restrictions in Pinkerton County, he added that the marketing focused on buyers who value the site's history and scale rather than redevelopment potential. We were looking for someone who prized it for what it is, he said. Okay, so Karp is a billionaire whose data analysis company Palantir, headquartered in Denver, is closely associated with U.S. defense and intelligence work and was founded in 2003 by backing Silicon Valley figures, including Peter Thiel. Yes, Peter Thiel, who's doing his own speech about the Antichrist out there, the tech billionaire. Karp, an avid skier, joins a small but growing group of ultra-wealthy buyers pushing Aspen area pricing into uncharted territory. Last year marked the region's first 9-figure home sale when Steve Wynn and Thomas Peterfy paid $108 million for an estate near Red Mountain. The monastery transaction comes amid tightening inventory and rising prices across Aspen and Snowmass. Okay, so there you go. You got a multi-billion-dollar guy for the contractor of all of U.S. intelligence, artificial intelligence, data collection operations. Palantir, CEO, good for you, buddy. $120 million 3,700-acre monastery is now his. What is he going to do with it? I have no idea. But I do have another story here that I should have added in the show notes. I apologize. I don't know why I didn't include it. Let me just pull it up real quick because it is important. And it's right up our alley for topics of concern, and it's related to the story. The gates of the gods. CERN. This is right off of CERN or home.cern in the news section. Private donors pledge 860 million euros for CERN's future circular collider. A consortium of private donors, individuals, and philanthropic foundations have agreed to support the proposed future circular collider at CERN. Okay, so it says here, for the first time in history, private donors, individuals, and philanthropic foundations have agreed to support a CERN flagship research project. Recently, a group of friends of CERN, including the Breakthrough Prize Foundation, the Eric and Wendy Schmidt Fund for Strategic Innovation, and the entrepreneurs John Elkin and Xavier Neal have pledged significant funds towards the construction of a future circular collider, the FCC, which is so funny that the FCC is the acronym here, based on what we have in America. The potential successor of the Large Hadron Collider, the potential contributions totaling some 860 million euros and corresponding to $1 billion would represent a major private sector investment in the advancement of research in fundamental physics. So here's the thing, guys, and you know this. These folks have millions and millions of dollars, and they can do nearly anything with it. There are people homeless in America right now. Now, money doesn't just solve any problem. And I understand, it's the rights of the people who have the money to do whatever they want with it. But instead of fixing, basic infrastructure type of stuff, they're buying $150 million homes in Aspen, Colorado, and contributing to the world's largest machine, CERN. And they name here some folks. They have a quote from Eric Schmidt. If you are not familiar with who Eric Schmidt is, he was one of the first CEOs of Google. And the way Google hired him, and this is something that Canarians know very well, is the people at Google took Eric Schmidt to Burning Man, and they observed how Eric Schmidt would mingle with the crowd. And based on the way he mingled with the crowd, they decided he would be a great next CEO of Google. And it was during his time that they dropped the tagline, "Don't be evil." Wasn't that the Google thing? Don't be evil. They dropped that that tagline. It's like, why are you dropping that tagline? If anything, you should double down on it. But they dropped it. So yeah, why are a bunch of wealthy people getting together and raising $1 billion to build the next Hadron Collider? I mean, it could be that there needs to be more of the demonic horde coming through the portals, and therefore they need another bigger, stronger portal. Proof of concept with the Large Hadron Collider. It works. They can mess with time. They can mess with the masses of populations. So they need to up the game. But there you go. That's some quick news about that. It's just keeping our finger on the pulse of something like CERN, who are also looking to discover all the secrets of the universe. Well, they wouldn't be secrets, if it's something that just exists, why is it a secret? Why are you trying to discover the things that God already set in motion? That's what's going on here. All right. In other news here, just a couple more things and I will get out of here. Over the weekend, Fulton County, we won't dispute the 315,000 votes lacking poll workers' signatures were counted in 2020. And I mean, I'm too little too late, I suppose. And maybe this is some misdirection going on to keep, people busy while some other things are getting put in place. But the basic story goes, let me just read a little bit here. Earlier this month, Fulton County admitted that approximately 315,000 votes from the 2020 election were illegally certified, but were nonetheless still included in the final results of that election. Now, 315,000 votes for one county. I don't know what is the population of Fulton County. Let me do a real quick search here. Let's see what they tell us is the population of Fulton County. It is, okay, about 1 million. All right, so 1 million people in 2020. So 1 million people, and then a third of the population voted without a proper signature, and they admitted basically to that whole thing. So basically, the point is, oh yeah, there was voter fraud in the 2020 elections. And for some people in, deep in the weeds of politics, this is like, oh, this is another, we got to highlight this and bring this to light and fix things. I've been saying for years that we have transparent technology to facilitate a fair vote. Even county to county, we can maintain the electoral college when it comes to elections and do that, but there are ways to make things transparent. The fact that we choose not to says a lot. Another reason why I don't like politics. It's another reason why I don't like politics. All right, one more story. I don't want to belabor the point here because I want to talk about Antarctica. Because why not? It's been a while.
It's cold, Basil. It's cold. Antarctica, go burn. Antarctica. Snowstorm. Antarctica.
Ice scientists are penguins.
Antarctica, they're opening the abyss.
They're opening the abyss. Earth.com. Enormous 68 million year old egg dubbed the Thing unearthed in Antarctica. Now, my brain is not a AI supercomputer. It never will be. But I do recall this story existing in years past. I don't think this is a new story. Hold on. I'm going to check. Antarctica, egg, the Thing, millions of years old. Let's see if there's anything that pulls up. I'm convinced that this is an old story. Yeah. Okay. I'm not crazy, folks. Basil's right at the top of the show. I am not crazy. And this is why, doing this show is such a unique it's such a unique thing because if you're just a normal guy or gal out there, you see the story, you're like, wow, look at that. Crazy. A 68 million year old egg was found in Antarctica and it is called they call it the Thing. They call it the Thing. And it's, what is it? Is it a dinosaur egg? Is it a Nephilim egg? What could it be? When there are articles that existed not way before, but years before. Here we go. June 2020. A giant soft-shelled egg from the late Cretaceous of Antarctica. Does it mention it being called the Thing? Oh, it doesn't mention it on this article. Interesting. Is it the same one though? All right, now I am questioning my memory. Oh, it's got to be the same one. Yeah, they got the same pictures. Okay. All right. Yeah. So June 2020 is when the they had this story out there about the Antarctica egg called the Thing. I'm almost wondering, did we cover it? That's the next question. Did we cover it on News Talk? Let's check. Go to canarycrynewstalk.com, folks. You can do that on your own. There is a secret way to look up certain keywords that we have used to publish episodes in the past. And if you do that, you can look up to see if there are any articles that relate to the topics that you want to look up. So, for example, I'm looking up Egg Antarctica. Did not bring back any search results. So maybe we didn't do it live on air. But I do remember the story because I remember looking at it. And yeah, this was published in 2020, but it's being brought to the public now in 2025 by Earth.com. Nicknamed The Thing, the fossil egg measures about 11 inches long and 8 inches wide and was uncovered by on Seymour Island. Those measurements make it the largest soft-shelled egg ever found and the second largest egg from any animal. The first fossil does not look like an egg at all. They talk about all that. Eventually, the team assigned the formal name Antarcticulithus bradii. Antarcticulithus bradii. Official fossil label for this unusual egg to the specimen. Okay, that's a good way to check if we are correct about this article from 2020. What's that word? What's the crazy word that they just used? I'm doing this off the cuff, guys, so bear with me as I look it up real quick. Ah, there it is. Antarcticulithus bradii on nature.com 2020. All right. So there you go. Old story. Why do they recycle? Now, this is a question. Why do they recycle these stories every so often? You know, talk about there's nothing new under the sun. It's like the same stories get repeated over and over and over again. And every time they recycle it, it does reach a new audience. But it's almost like there's a controlled revelation. Perhaps it is the revelation of the method, which is a tactic used by the propagandists to slowly indoctrinate the public into certain systems of worldviews. They can't do it overnight. They can do it through traumatic events. That's often the case. But leading up to those traumatic events, they need to lay the groundwork. And I do wonder, why is this in the news again? What could it be for? What purposes? Leave it in the comments. Leave it in the thread replies on X if you're in there. And by the way, thank you to all the people on X who interact with the Face Like the Sun account. Appreciate you. Those of you who are sharing and reposting and commenting. It means a lot. I know it's not the easiest thing. Well, actually, it is easy. You just press a few buttons. It's not that hard to do. But it is sort of compromising your account to the algos that don't like me. You guys are participating in being not liked by the algos. So I appreciate you not leaving me out to dry on my own. And I think that's pretty much it with today. I mean, there were a few other things that I really wanted to go into, but we got to save some of that for another time. Theologically speaking, I think I made my bigger point about what's happening and why I am in this kind of narrow position that doesn't appease any side of the political aisle, but also pushing back against any type of censorship of anybody, any groups. Let people say what they want to say. If you want to censor it, you can. And if your child, let's say, because here's the thing, like, all those video clips and pictures of cross-dressers and trans people reading books to kids in elementary schools and stuff, all that stuff went viral. And certainly, like, I'm in agreement. Like, let's not have that in classrooms. Okay. I don't want my kid to be in a classroom and some, you know, 60-year-old troubled individual wearing a dress and a halter top or something, walking in reading a book, dressed as a clown or something. I don't want that either. Okay. But if your child, or when your child is exposed to stuff like that, it's an opportunity to have a real heart-to-heart conversation and really teach them, like, sometimes, there are things that you disagree with or you don't like that you may run into or experience. And it's, at some level, it's unavoidable. You cannot avoid those things. You can try, you can put up guardrails, but eventually you're going to experience some of those things. Maybe there's no guarantee, obviously, but it's like riding a bike. At some point, you got to take off the training wheels and you just have to fall. And you just got to know what it's like to fall off a bike, and that'll make you a better bike rider over time. If you just keep the practice wheels on, you're never going to be able to ride a bike. You're always going to rely on the guardrails. And similarly, if we are going to monitor speech the way that it's being presented as, hey, any anti-Semitic speech we cannot allow, then people are going to rely on, and this is what these institutions and group wants. They want the authority of that. They want to be relied upon to shape public opinion and to direct conversation about these topics. And is it truly just to protect the innocent? Is it truly just to protect the Jewish people? Which, by the way, I don't think anybody should go out and start hurting Jewish people or like yelling at them or trying to destroy their reputation, like kind of how the anti-Semitic Stop Anti-Semitism lady said last episode. Remember how she was like, Google and SEO will follow you for the rest of your life. Your life will be ruined if you ever say anything bad. Like, no, I don't think we should do that to people that identify as Jewish or, Israeli or whatever. Let's argue and debate the actual substantive topics at hand and not turn it into ad hominem. Unfortunately, we are fallen humans and we tend to start to, sling negative words or label other people. Look, I'm just as guilty. Okay. I'm just as bad at that. I try not to do it. And I do draw a line. I don't start calling people anti-Semites or heretics very easily. When I use those words, if I say someone's being heretical, I'm being very serious about that. It's not a cultural heresy that I'm pointing out necessarily. It's more of a biblical one. So anyway, you can have these conversations with your kids if they get exposed to things that you don't want them exposed to. And coming from a biblical worldview, you can really show them the problem, the fallen nature of man, and they will get it. My 8-year-old gets it. My 5-year-old gets it. He doesn't always, he's not able to respond. Sometimes when things happen to him, like he's very emotional sometimes, and he gets angry and he has these temper tantrums sometimes that are not placed in the right. There's no reason for him to be mad. It's like a misunderstanding of something his sister said, and he gets mad about that, whatever. So there's things like that. So he's 5, but he still gets the concept of, oh, there's people that do bad things in this world. Bad things can happen to me. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean they're necessarily bad, because he always does like the I'm bad. Like if anytime he gets in trouble, he gets mad. He gets, I'm mad, I'm bad. And he's mad at himself, which I don't know where he gets that. Mad at himself, hard on himself. I have no idea where he got those traits. but the point is that they get it. But for some reason, when it comes to the greater culture, we're not allowed to have those conversations. We have to prevent it at any cost because we have to prevent, patsies and people that just so happen to have a history with the FBI to go shoot up some synagogue or something. I'm not advocating for violence at all. I never have, and I never will. I advocate good conversations, iron sharpen iron, and point people to Christ. And if you disagree with me on those things, and like you still can't get past like my opinion about all this, then at that point, that's on you. That's not on me. I've kind of laid out my cards. So, and that's really where we all should be, where we like kind of lay out our cards of like, here's what we think. Here's my core stuff. That's not changing. Here's some other stuff, open to change on some of those things. Whether it's like, should we keep the Sabbath? Like biblically, to me, like I looked at it. I had somebody reply to a post of mine and wrote a huge essay on why it's a sin to not follow the Sabbath exactly as the Old Testament lays out. And he made his argument, and it's a decent argument. But I have counter arguments that show, especially from the New Testament, that look, if you want to follow the feasts, you can, but you're not like number one, your salvation is not based on whether you keep the feasts. And secondly, you're not necessarily pleasing God by following the feasts. I know that's a controversial statement, but you're not. Just because you follow the feasts that were laid out in the Old Testament that God said will be a forever feast, that he will actually even consummate the actual, the final supper in terms of the lamb and the Christ and his bride, that final wedding imagery of restoration. And it's got feast language all around it. I'm not denying that at all. But if somebody doesn't follow the feasts, are they in sin? Debatable. I don't think so. Is their salvation in jeopardy? No, explicitly no. And again, those are fun in-house debates and conversations that we can have that aren't happening enough because the vacuum of politics sucking up all the substantive stuff and just wrapping it with political turd salad and presenting it to the people. Okay, I think that's the sign, that's the cue that we're wrapping up, that I'm starting to make analogies about turd salads. It's time to go, folks. It's hopefully everyone has a great Christmas, whether you observe it or not. And I appreciate everybody who's still here and tuning in and all that. It's definitely a little bit less than what we've had in the past, and for some reason it just keeps dwindling down. Less and less people listening to us, and it's because of stuff like this. There's Malik. Hey Malik, what's up, buddy? He's in there. He said, yes, CCNT, that's Canary Cry News Talk, doesn't even populate when you type in YouTube search bar. Is what I know. It's crazy. We don't get any love from these platforms. But that's okay, because we're not concerned with getting love from the world. We're really, I know you guys are the audience, but really we're doing our best to glorify the Lord, and he's ultimately the one we are answering to. And we've tried to keep that at the forefront of our mind consistently ever since starting the podcast. And despite some of the challenges that we've faced, we have made it through, and that's not because of our own strength, but because of the strength of the Lord and because of the support of the community. That's you. And we're very grateful for all of that. We're very thankful and grateful for all that. And so, and I have my views about Christmas, and it's gone through some evolutions as well. There was a period where I was very adamant that everybody should definitely not celebrate Christmas because it's a pagan holiday, and I was very almost pharisaic about it. And so I understand people that are in that camp, and I respect it. I'm not saying you're wrong. Certainly has some pagan roots, but also there is more Christian history that doesn't get discussed enough in the context of modern Christmas celebration. Some of the elements might have some pagan roots, but it doesn't mean that they are therefore currently, used for the explicit purpose of pagan agendas. And it goes back to heart posture. Heart posture is so important. It's going to be the thing that I'm going to beat to death the next few years, is your heart posture, whether you're studying theology or eschatology or modern politics. I think your heart posture has to be in line with the scriptures so that we can practice being the imagers of God. It's not just a inherited thing. It is a practice. It's a thing that we do, being imagers of God. It's not just some or identity thing. In order to do that effectively, we really have to have that heart posture that leans on God. And ultimately, that's what gives it. For me, goes back to Philippians 4, the peace that surpasses all understanding. Based on some of the news headlines that we talk about on the show, we should be freaking out. All of us should be freaking out. And there are times to, we have our freak out moments. That is true. Like we've 902 episodes of this podcast, 100 and almost 200 episodes of Canary Cry Radio, 1,000 videos of Face Like the Sun. At some point, I'm freaking out about something, okay? But it ebbs and flows. At a certain point, eventually, you kind of come off the soapbox and you realize that, okay, we understand the passion here, but what's more important, And that's when I think people either stay in the chaos, like in the state of alarmism, or they graduate from it and they see the alarmism. We certainly see all the things that are alarming and needs to be addressed and discussed for the purposes of understanding what's going on in the world. But if the punchline isn't Jesus, you're wasting your time. And that's the bottom line. We operate on value for value, which means no advertisements, no affiliate codes. That's why I am able to ramble. Folks, I have been rambling for 3 hours. 3 hours. I have been rambling nonstop. And I have most certainly incriminated myself as some kind of anti-Semite according to the Stop Anti-Semitism and all these other groups. Even though I said I worked at a Jewish facility, even though my experience wasn't great. I have Jewish friends. I love, Jewish people. They're great. It's some Jewish food. Some of it's good. Not all of it's great. Some of the food is great. Like I like going to the kosher shops and getting like kosher chicken and stuff. And, some of that, like it tastes better. It's like better food. And I have no problem with the Jewish people. I have a problem with intelligence operations that are taking advantage of well-meaning Christians to become politicized. I have a problem with some of those things, but again, it's just an opinion. And if that labels me anti-Semitic, then it just proves to me the scriptures that we will be hated for Christ's sake, period. And I know that's a common trope that's being used from both sides of this current political debate of Zionism versus pro-Israel. But it's why we do what we do. And it's why we're able to do it. It's because we're value for value. We don't let institutions, corporations, cabals, whoever, to dictate our thoughts and opinions. So what you hear from this account, what you hear from this podcast is our own thoughts and opinions. We will tell you where we get some ideas. I will reference my sources, on any given thing. But in terms of the actual thoughts and opinions and my position on things, we are not being told to think a certain way from anybody. Okay. And so, yes, that's how we operate value for value.
We only exist because of producers just like you who get value from the show and they put value back in with their time, their talent, or their treasure. There's lots of ways to do it. Whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. Their talent or their treasure.
And typical of a Gonz solo episode, we're going to save all the thanking of the producers until next week. I believe Basil's back Monday. So, let's see. Oh, look, fun comments coming in. I don't know who this person is talking to. Oh, here we go. Okay. They're talking about the Christmas is pagan thing. Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is a whole separate debate, whole separate conversation. We can get into that some other time. But yeah. I understand where people are coming from when it comes to some of these things. And, again, I get it. I was there. I was right there next to you telling everybody and being very judgy and all that. And Look, I don't think it. I think it's important to know some of these issues, but also study the whole history or as much as you can, because there's a reason why some of the cultural markers exist, and it's not always pagan in origin. And that's why I keep going back to heart posture. Because if a Christian family has a Christmas tree, it doesn't mean that they are practicing paganism. Okay, I know that a wreath, right, the circular thing, a wreath was put together basically as a portal for demonic entities, right? So if you're putting a wreath on your door, the argument goes that therefore you are just inviting demons right into your home. So if every Christian that puts a wreath on their door is they're getting demons, or is the heart posture important here? It's important also because in magic with a K, the occult magic, the occult magicians, a lot of what they do, and they will tell you that it is based on intent. A lot of magic in that sense. The occult practices. It's based on intent. Like you have to intentionally want harm for this person. And so you kind of put that out there and then you build up the momentum for that to manifest, quote unquote. And then that person is harmed, right? So these things exist. A lot of it is heart posture. Your intent matters in that way. I'm not saying the occultists are right, that intent matters, but it's the heart posture. And God cares a lot more, biblically speaking, God cares a lot more about your heart and your heart posture than the actual substance of stuff. You have oh boy, man, I wish I can just like spit out some of these scriptures off the top of my head, but I can't. I have it in my notes somewhere. But the woman in, it's bothering me now. Hold on, I have it in my notebook here because I mentioned it opening worship service the other day. Let me open my notebook here. Mark chapter 12. That's what it was. Mark chapter 12. The poor woman, right? She has nothing. She has barely anything to give, but she gives what she has. And Jesus highlights her of like, that's the heart of a true giver. She didn't have much, but she still gave. And so it's not the material thing that she gave that matters. It's the heart posture that matters. And so I think it's those things are important to point out. Now, in conversation, I will drop those little things like, hey, there's a passage in the Bible about trees crying because they're getting decorated and stuff. And some people have related that to Christmas trees. It's an okay argument. It's not rock solid, but there's some stuff in there. And also you can look at the pagan origins of some of the things that we do on December 24th. I will bring up, hey, December 25th, not Jesus' real birthday. I'll bring stuff like that. But there's a place and time for those conversations. And in my church anyway, I'm that guy. Now I could have been like, you know what? I can't find a church that agrees with my takes on things. So forget church. I'm not going to church. And a lot of people do that. But having children, having all this, there came a point where I thought, you know what? It's better to be in a congregation, even if you don't agree with some of the stuff. As long as the core stuff is in alignment, we should fellowship with fellow brethren. And then within those conversations, we can become the light that shines truths about these things, whether it's the topic of the Nephilim or the topic of Christmas. Is it pagan? These conversations can be had, but it should be had in the context of fellowship. And because here's the thing, if enough people start to understand that, you as a congregation can maybe do some things that are, not culturally traditional in a sense when it comes to something like Christmas. I like Sir Darren here mentions some folks act like demons have more power than God does. They want to feel like they can control themselves rather than submitting themselves to Christ and not being a stumbling block to each other. Yeah, I agree. There is a an element of that where some people attribute way too much power to Satan and the demons. All right. Well, I'm not going to have the debate here right now at the end of the show. Producers, go to canarycry.support if you want to support the podcast. We will thank you by name next episode, which will be next Monday, the 29th. Tomorrow is the Federal Reserve Act passed day. So 1913 was when that happened. We got Christmas Eve on the 24th, which is Daddy Fauci's birthday. Happy birthday, Anthony Fauci. And then we have Christmas on the 25th. It's also Justin Trudeau's birthday. Yeah, there you go. Boom, boom. Hey, no need to apologize at Unforgiven too. There's no reason to apologize, dude. You don't have to apologize. And I don't know if you're apologizing is like, hey, I have my point, and or if it's like, hey, I'm sorry I brought it up, but no worries, man. People can say whatever. You guys can say whatever you want in the comments, unless you're being like terribly disruptive and like, actually just like causing strife in there. We're not going to kick you out of the chat. So you're good, man. This is it. This is where the rubber meets the road, showing an example of like, hey, we can disagree about some of these issues, but we can still have fellowship, right? So, and the reason why, I was going to do another episode maybe later this week, but given the holidays, given Basil being out, and given my the health of my mother. Okay, I need prayers, guys. Here we go.
Producers, assemble!
I was informed over the weekend that my mother had some heart issues. She's had heart issues for a couple years now. Had to go into the hospital. Emergency surgery happened yesterday. She got a stint in her heart. And so she's doing okay, but I'm going to go spend some time with my mom. So that'll be the next day or so, a couple days, I guess. And so for the rest of this week, I'm going to focus on that, as well as my duties as a worship leader at the church. Got to play a bunch of songs on Christmas Eve. So I got that to do as well. And so that's kind of my life this week, and then spend time with family, as I implore all of you to do, whether you think Christmas is pagan or not. The world kind of takes a break from things. So definitely take the opportunity to spend time with family and friends, and stoke those good discussions. I guarantee you on the guarantee, high likelihood that if your family members are up to speed on anything going on in culture, Charlie Kirk will come up, Nick Fuentes will come up, Candace Owens will come up in discussion around the dinner table. So just be prepared for that. And maybe promote this episode and say, hey, go listen to Gon's ramble for 3.5 hours about it. And maybe you'll get a different insight on some of these issues. But I'm open to having my mind changed about some of this. I just haven't really come across any arguments that are compelling enough for me to really dive into. But yeah, thank you for the prayers, guys, for this year, actually, for my father, who battled lung cancer. And actually, it's a miracle, guys. He finished his last treatment a few weeks ago, and the cancer is gone. So thank you for your prayers. He's still under watch, and he's it is a thing where my parents did not listen to my advice and decided to go ahead and the thing, the pokey. They decided to do that because they're older and whatnot. I tried really hard to get them to not do that, but they did. And then of course they're having health issues a few years later, which it's kind of hard to tell because they're older. They're in their mid 70s. So you're going to have health issues anyway at a certain degree. But some of the stuff, man, I was like, that's for another time. It's for another conversation. But thank you for the prayers from everybody. Appreciate that. Continue praying for each other. Really, everybody in the Canarium. If you're here listening to my voice right now, you are extremely unique. You are not the majority. You are not part of the herd that gets whisked by the wind of any political move or any, you're not just a feather out there. You're sticking with the rock, who is the foundation, who is Christ, doing our best to follow him. So appreciate all of you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all the producers, time, talent, treasure. You know who you are. And share the show, share it with friends, family. It's a good time to share maybe this episode. Radio Sack found Soft War. Yeah, that's the same link that I had it from before, so maybe it's still out there. Okay, great, fantastic. Look for Soft War if you're looking for that book. And otherwise, yeah, go tell a friend, family member about the show. Walk right up to him and shake him. That's the wrong jingle. What am I doing? Here we go. Wait. There we go. Shake them.
The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
Generation have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
Just ask Noah. Man, still think it's crazy that line says so much about some of the worldviews we have here on our show with the Nephilim and Genesis 6 and the Divine Council and how it shapes modern politics and genetics and all kinds of stuff. And, it does feel a little bit like having this Zionist debate and pro-Israel, anti-Israel type of conversation. It's a big step backwards when it comes to like the real issues like genetic engineering and surveillance and all these different issues. It's like we're being distracted from that while all of that is being put in place, unfortunately. But we will be back next week, Monday. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Or weekend, holiday season. Tell someone you love them. Preach the good word to them. And stay strong. Until then, which is the next episode. Until then, think outside the cage.
Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths.
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
Cosmos, children in the space lane.
I'm an adult in a spaceship.
Supersonic space lane screamed to life and the vehicle swooped upward on board. The passengers experienced a 3 G's of force from the burst of extreme acceleration and watched the blue sky fade into space.
In the back have been cleared to unstrap.
Oh, yeah.
In the back have been cleared to unstrap.
Yes. Do it, Richard. Do it, Jeff. Do it for humanity.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship.
He can accomplish it. You can too. Big windows, cool. Rocket ship, cool. Space plane, cool.
Nukes,
cool.
Blowing stuff up,
cool. Space plane, astronaut, rocket ship.
ABS anchor.
We have Bezos. He's a human. Just look at him. Go to the bathroom in bags. He can go to the bathroom in the cosmos. It changed everything. Wives in space. Children in the cosmos. With your best friend brother. Wives in the cosmos. Children in the space lane.
We are headed to space.
This is the United States of America, for God's sake.
I cry to the Lord with my voice, with my voice, and to the Lord did I make my supplication. I pour out my complaint
before him. I showed before him my trouble, my spirit was. It is never me. I lived on my right hand and beheld there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No one cared for my soul. I cried unto thee, oh Lord. I said, thou art my refuge and my portion. In the land of the living. Tend unto my God, for I am very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. My soul out of prison, and I may praise thy name. Righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me.
Value for value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
Canary